What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the first part of a story where Issei faked his death and left everyone. Despite my hopes for positive change, nothing has improved. My family has all but disowned me, acting as if I never existed. The women I loved now regard me with contempt and publicly humiliate me. Worst of all, they have found happiness with other men, not me. Yet now it is my turn to pursue my own happiness, even if it means moving on without them. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Also, this is a translate version, you may find some mistakes, specifically in the character's gender. Issei of course is a male, but this time we have a female volley, and also Issei will have a sister. Now, let's get into part 1. You could see 3 siblings, 2 of whom were twins, and the last one was a year younger than them, but the difference was that one of the twins and the sister hit the second twin a lot. Issei, the youngest sister, her skin was light, her brown hair was always worn down. With her parents, she appeared to be cute, tender and humble, but her true face was that of a spoiled, arrogant and conceited girl. Issei, unlike his twin brother, his hair was black. The younger twin, who was born minutes after his brother, everyone thought that he was humble, a good person in society, but he was quite the opposite. He liked to steal his credit to his brother, humiliating people, talking behind their backs, and he was the worst arrogant. Finally, the older twin, Issei, his brown hair, his amber eyes, he was not like his brothers, he was too kind, he never asked for anything in return, he didn't like receiving praise either, the only thing he asked for was a simple thank you. The brothers were wielders of sacred gear, where the souls of 3 fearsome dragons were sealed. Issei was the wielder of the dragon queen Karma Tiamat, Ryu was the wielder of the evil dragon Krom Krua, and finally Issei, the wielder of the heavenly dragon Drake. The years went by, but the humiliations towards his older brother also grew, who did not defend himself, since he did not like to hurt his brothers. Years later they met Arena Shido, to which Issei became good friends with her, but one day they left, but they promised to get married in the future. But nothing is a simple life. The 2 younger twins entered the supernatural, where Ria's Gremory reincarnated the 2 brothers, while Issei decided to hide who he really was. All the achievements that Issei achieved on the battlefield were never recognized, of which the credits went to his brothers. The words were more than enough for Issei's childhood friend to hate him and see him as a hindrance. Issei fell in love with different girls, which were the Seraph of Heaven Gabriel, but she saw him as a pervert, since his brother Ryu destroyed his reputation, making him see him as a pervert. The Cadre Penemu, the Mao Leviathan Seraphol, the Queen of the Yake Susaka, the White Empress Valeria Lucifer, Ravel Phoenix, Kaneko Taoju, Kuroka Hellcat, Lefay Pendragon, Asia Argento, Akeno Himejima, Ria's Gremory, Yui Caddis, Kaori Murayama, Office Cerberus, Valerie Teeps, Elmenhold Karnstein, Ingvold Leviathan, Zenobia Corda and Roswis, each viewed him with disgust and repulsion. After finishing sealing the beast of the apocalypse, Issei faked his death and disappeared with someone who never turned her back on him, which was Momo Hanakai, Sona Citri's bishop, who supported both of their decisions. Current time. You could see the leaders of the factions, the DXD group, each one with a look of guilt, but what was that reason? Azazel. So he's not on the Elysian fields either, he said helplessly, since the others had a look of sadness, while remembering the times that Issei asked him to train him, but he never helped him. Serziches. I thought it would be best to let his soul rest, he gave a lot for us, we don't have to bother him anymore, he said sadly, while remembering the times when the brown-haired boy wanted to help him and he turned his back on him. Seraphol. But the Mao Leviathan could not say anything, since she was interrupted by Michael. Michael. They're right, we treated him like a nuisance, and he still helped us, he said with a sad face, remembering the ideas that Issei gave him to make the sky system work 100%, but Michael never did. Case. Who would say that leaders were so hypocritical? He asked in a mocking tone. Auden. What are you doing here, Hades? He asked in a challenging tone. Hades. I just came to say thank you, he said in a mocking tone. Seraphol. What do you mean by thank you? She asked confused. Hades. By the soul of Issei, the current Sekiryuite, he said, but the last thing caused surprise, except for the Citri group, Arthur and Biku. Rias. He never had a sacred gear, we would have realized it, she said without being able to believe it. Hades. Are you sure, because this says otherwise, he said, while in his hand he showed a gem from the Sekiryuite armor. But before they could ask or deny that it was a lie, the gem began to shine, and then they saw how it projected a memory, which would break several people's hearts. Start of recording. You could see Issei, who was on the balcony of his room, but you could tell that he had a worried look on his face. Greg. Partner, why don't we escape? They heard a voice, to see in the hologram how Issei's left arm, the booster gear appears. Issei. Drake, I know you're worried about what I plan to do tomorrow, but I won't allow my friends to be harmed. He said seriously. Drake. I still don't understand, those stupid leaders should take charge of the 666. You have already sacrificed too much for them. He said with disgust, which made the leaders feel guilty. Issei. They may be like that, but I know they can change. He said with a smile, which made the leaders feel guilty. Drake. Partner, don't forget that a crooked branch can never be straightened. He said seriously. Issei. Drake, tomorrow the only way to defeat him would be to use that attack. He said wanting to cry. Drake. That's right partner, in addition to that, the booster gear will be destroyed along with my soul and yours. He said seriously. Issei. I hope that tomorrow our sacrifice will be worth it. He said sadly. Drake. You know, even if I am not remembered for making such a sacrifice, I can leave knowing that our sacrifice was worth it. He said with a voice full of joy. Issei. Drake, thank you for helping me by doing this, I'm still afraid of dying tomorrow. He said with fear, while tears flowed from his eyes. Drake. You are not the only one, you not only gave me your arm, but your heart, I hope that tomorrow we can rest in peace, although our soul will be destroyed. He said with a proud voice. Issei. Tomorrow I will die, but at least I will die happy, knowing that my sacrifice is that everyone can see it tomorrow. He said with a dreamy look. Drake. That's how it is said, partner, but if our soul is never destroyed, do you plan to go to that place? He said seriously. Issei. That's right partner, I plan to go to the 9 circles. He said, which scared those present. Drake. In that case, my friend, we will go together. He said seriously. Issei. You know, we have to rest, since today is our last night. He said sadly, while entering his room. End of recording. At the end of the recording, those present had tears in their eyes, but they see how Hades takes that gem and keeps it. Hades. He removed my features, I can only say that they are the worst and especially you. He said, while pointing to the angels. Julio. I can't allow you to disrespect Michael Sama and Gabriel Sama. He said seriously, but before attacking, Great Gabriel speared. Hades. Seriously, but with the purest heart, she was able to read his heart, but it seems that reading the heart of someone noble made her disgusted. He said mockingly, while Gabriel felt a stake in his heart. Gabriel. Don't do it, Julio-san, he's right. He said, while tears came out of his eyes. Hades. You know, I thought Office would give him a small part of her power to defeat the Trixahera, but it wasn't like that, he defeated him with a transformation that is forbidden. He said with a mocking smile, everyone felt the worst. Valeria. You mean the Juggernaut drive, that transformation takes away your sanity. She said, unable to believe it. Hades. That's right, he himself did such stupidity, but you know I have respect for the Sekiryuite, because he used Drake's flames to give him an increase, even knowing the consequences of those flames. He said with respect, which left everyone doubtful, except for Tiamat, Albion, Vritra, Crom Cruach and Yulong. Tiamat. So they burned their souls. He said, as a crown appears on Issei's head. Seraphol. What does Tiamat-chan mean by that? She asked curiously. Tiamat. Those flames of Drake are too dangerous, even the gods fear them, they burn the soul, if that comes back to life, they will light up again, and Office, Great Red and Albion were immune to these flames. She said with seriousness, while Issei had a lump in his throat. Ryu. What does it matter, I was able to defeat him without problems, don't you remember that I killed Rizavum? He said proudly. Hades. What you killed was a simple clone, your brother defeated the original. He said with a superior smile, which annoyed Ryu. Issei. My brother's soul where it is? He said seriously. Hades. Hahaha, you're giving me a brat order, don't forget who I am. He said, as he was going to leave, until he heard someone speak to him. Omenhold. Please tell us where your soul is, please. She said on her knees, everyone was surprised, since she was too proud. Hades. He is not dead, it seems that he faked his death to be happy with someone else. He said with a smile. Omenhold. You know where it is? She said in hope finding Issei. Hades. I can't answer those questions, since he lives in peace and if you go where he is, you'll be hypocrites, wanting him to break his bones again. He said seriously, breaking the hope of seeing the brown-haired boy, but they see how Hades disappears in a magic circle. Time after. The meeting had ended, where many were sorry, while Sona Sitri and her peerage, along with Biku and Arthur, stood with a worried look, not realizing that Seraphol was coming after them, to try to live with her sister. Arthur. They are hypocrites, he has already sacrificed a lot for them, and they still want to demand more from him. He said with disappointment, which Seraphol heard. Biku. Hahaha, but at least he's too far away with that girl. He said, which caught Seraphol's attention. Saji. Kaicho, how did you extract the piece from Hanakai-san? He asked curiously. Sona. Yes, the ritual to turn someone into your servant, you just have to modify it. She said, which surprised Serafal. Tsubaki. Arthur-san, where is Issei? He asked curiously, which caught Serafal's attention, who became excited. Arthur? He is currently somewhere in Germany. He said normally, which made Serafal excited. Baruko. Why are there Issei-senpai and Momo-senpai? She asked curiously. Sona. It's a place where a friend of mine is, and the devils there are from an older hierarchy. She said normally. Iku? I don't understand anything. He said with a nervous smile. Sona. In short, devils are not forced to commit, they are free from any command of the Mao. Said, to which Biku nodded. Serafal. So you knew where they were all this time? She said with her gaze downcast, while her hair covered her eyes. Sona. That's right One-sama, besides it shouldn't be your problem what he does with his life. She said seriously, while tears came out of Serafal's eyes. Serafal. What's not my problem? Of course it's my problem. She said angrily, while she continued crying. Sona. You said it yourself. I don't care what a pervert like him does, because if he disappears he would be one less nuisance. She said, well remembering that phrase, the day she spoke with the Mao Lucifer, after rejecting the brown-haired boy who had invited her on a date. Serafal. Maybe I said it, but now. She couldn't finish speaking, as Sona slapped her, knocking her to the ground. Sona. Don't be a hypocrite, how is it that you care now, and I'll tell you something, you can't force him to come back, since he's a human. She said seriously, as she left, leaving her sister rubbing her cheek, where his sister slapped him. Germany. A brown-haired boy and a white-haired girl could be seen walking calmly. Momo. Do you think Hades-sama will tell the leaders that he faked his death? She asked the brunette, but fear could be noticed in her tone of voice. Issei. It's the safest thing, but I don't care, as long as I can be by your side, the rest of the world doesn't matter to me. He said with a smile that showed happiness. Momo. I hope the factions don't come here. She said with a look full of concern. Issei. If that happens, I would give my life for you, as long as you are okay. He said with a look of determination. The two of them talked, without giving importance to what was happening around them, the only thing that mattered to them was each other's presence. 4 months later. The months had passed calmly for Issei and Momo, who kept a low profile in Germany, but with the factions, everything took a 180 degrees turn, since upon finding out where the Sekiryu was, they wanted to go to where he was, alone. For Sona to tell them that they were forbidden to approach two humans, they all looked frustrated. Greg. Partner, your body is too weak. He informed his host. Issei. I know, but I don't want to worry Momo. He said, while watching her sleep. Greg. I understand partner, but at least you have the strength of a high-class devil to be able to defend yourself. He said proudly to his host. Issei. You're right, besides Sona's friend, she's different from the ones I know. He said, well remembering that most of the devils in command of the mass are arrogant, but those of the old hierarchy lived a life without caring what happened to society. Greg. You're right, partner, it's time for the factions to defend themselves. He said with hatred, knowing that they depended on another being. Next day. Issei could be seen waking up, only to see Momo, who was sleeping peacefully, to which a thought came to him. Issei. I'm too lucky to have her by my side. He said in his thoughts, well he got up and let Momo sleep for a while, to which he decided to take a shower. After finishing taking a shower, he comes out of the bathroom with a change of clothes, which included a green sweatshirt, jeans and white tennis shoes. Issei. I better go prepare breakfast. He said, as he walked to the kitchen. While he was preparing breakfast, it could be seen that he was doing it calmly, since his family was going on a trip and he had to learn by himself how to prepare his own food. In that, a girl is seen walking to the kitchen, which had crimson hair that reached her waist, fair skin and violet eyes. You didn't have to make breakfast, I could do it. She said with her cheeks puffed out. Issei. It's no problem, you could also serve the dishes Mio. He said with a smile, while he finished cooking. Mio. Hi. He said with a smile, while looking for the cutlery. Issei. While you serve the food, I'm going to wake up Momo. He said with a smile, while she nodded. You could see the brunette go up to the room where he slept with Momo. When he got to his room he could see Momo still sleeping, to which he approached to wake her up with a tender kiss. Momo. She complained, while with her hand she rubbed her eyes, only to see the brown-haired boy. Issei. Wake up sleepyhead, breakfast is ready. He said with a smile. Momo. Another 5 minutes. He said, as he went back to sleep. Issei. Then I'll carry you to the dining room. He said with a smile, while carrying her. It was already normal for Issei and Momo to be like that, since the Citri clan, Biku and Arthur, were the only ones who knew where they were hiding, which they visit once a month. returning with Mio, Momo and Issei. A worried face could be seen on Mio, to which Issei decided to ask. Issei. What's wrong, Mio? He asked, worried about his friend. Mio. It's about the factions. They want to meet with my father, to ask permission to enter here, to look for you. He said seriously, but anger could be heard in his voice. Momo. We're sorry for causing you trouble, Mio. He said guiltily. Mio. Don't feel guilty, anyway, I will go to the faction meeting in person, representing my father. He said with a smile that gave those present a chill. Issei. If you want we can go as your bodyguards. He said seriously. Mio. Are you sure? She asked, worried about her friend. Issei. Yes, and Drake can hide my presence and my essence from the leaders. He said with a look that showed confidence. Momo. Yes, but I hope they don't do something stupid. She said seriously. Mio. I think the same as your Momo. She said, imagining different scenarios where they force her to give them permission to enter her father's territories. Issei. How long is the meeting? He asked curiously. Mio. It's in a week. He said tiredly. Greg. That gives us time for you to recover part of your power so that you can be on par with the morning. Lucifer. And the biblical god. Yahweh alongside. The destroyer. Shiva, he said in Issei's thoughts. Issei. I don't see a problem with it, at least I could see my friends. He said with a smile. Mio. You always see the positive in everything. He said with a smile. Issei. What can I tell you? He asked with a smile. Time after. At Mio's house you could see the aforementioned in her room, along with Momo, while Issei decided to walk, to which Momo decided to talk about something she realized. Momo. When will you tell Issei? She asked with a serious look. Mio. What do you mean? She said, while pretending to be confused, but there was a blush on her face that gave her away. Momo. I know very well that you have feelings for Issei. She said, which made Mio more nervous. Mio. I don't know what you're talking about. She said seriously, while in her mind she was too nervous. Momo. Don't act confused, I know very well that you are in love with Issei. She said seriously. Mio. Don't tell jokes. He said, well for a moment he looked sad, knowing that the brunette had a partner. Momo. Why? She asked confused. Mio. It's nothing, besides he already has you by his side. I whispered the last thing, but I still heard it. Momo. Momo. I hope you tell her your feelings before it's too late. She said, then left Mio's room. Seeing that she was alone, Mio could only let out a sigh of sadness as she stared at her face in a mirror on the wall and then watched as tears came out of her eyes. 3 days later. 3 days had passed, where Mio observed Momo and Issei's relationship firsthand, to which she always made an excuse to go to her room, where she would hide in the closet so that no one could see her cry. One day Issei saw that Mio was not in the kitchen, so he went up to her room. Issei. Mio, you're here. He said, while knocking on her room, but receiving no answers. I'm going to come in. He said, worried about Mio. Opening the door, he noticed that Mio was not in her room, and the booster gear appeared. Greg. Partner, your presence is here in this room. He told her, and then disappeared while he looked for her in his room, but still nothing. When he was about to give up, he heard a voice, to which he decided to go to the closet. When he opened the closet, he could see Mio sleeping, but he could see that she was crying in her sleep, to which he decided to wake her up, but then he heard her speaking. Asleep. Mio. I'm sorry. Momo. I love Issei. She said through tears, to which Issei didn't know what to do. Issei. Why me? I asked Mio, who was still asleep. To which he decided to carry her bridal style, to which he lifted her carefully while walking to Mio's bed to put Mio to bed, but when he finished doing so, he decided to sit on his bed still on his side, watching how Mio slept. Mio. Don't leave me alone. She whispered sleepily, to which Issei decided to put his hand on top of Mio's to tell her that she was there. While this was happening, Momo could be seen, who was looking through the door, but a small smile could be seen on her face. Momo. I hope you don't make a mistake like those hypocrites. She whispered, while you could see a look that was already coming. Next day. Mio could be seen waking up, but then she felt a weight on her hand, only to see the brown-haired boy who had his hand on top of Mio's. Mio. He worried about me. She said with a smile, but then she remembers that he has a partner and a look of sadness invades her. Why am I so selfish? She asked herself sadly, while she wanted to burst into tears. Issei. I don't think you're selfish. He said, which surprised Mio. Mio. Since when have you been awake? She asked nervously. Issei. That doesn't matter now, but I want you to tell me, when did you start to like me? He asked. That question shocked Mio. Mio. Don't tell bad jokes. She said nervously, trying to deny it. Issei. Don't tell Eyes, last night I heard you say it while you were asleep. He said, while trying to touch her cheek with his hand, but she avoided it. Mio. I don't know what you're talking about. He said, while pretending to have a serious face, but you could hear a tone of sadness in his voice. Issei. Mio, please, I need to know. He said, to which Mio was going to deny it, but Drake takes control of Issei's body to push his host to steal a kiss from Mio. When they finished doing it, you could see that Mio tried to separate, but Issei transmitted his feelings to Mio through that kiss, to which Mio stopped resisting, to be able to reciprocate that kiss. When they separated, you could see the two looking at each other. Eyes. Issei. You can't deny it anymore, you do feel something for me. He said, to which Mio just nodded her head. Mio. Yes, but you already have Momo. She said sadly, while she wanted to burst into tears. Until he admitted it. He said with a tired sigh, to which Issei and Mio turned to see who it was, only to see Momo. Issei. I can explain it to you. He said nervously, to which Momo approaches him and kisses him, which left him confused. Momo. I already knew that Mio had feelings for you, so there's no problem. She said with a smile, but for some reason it gave Issei a chill. Mio. But he is your partner. She said sadly. Momo. I don't see any problem with Issei loving us both. She said as if nothing was wrong, which surprised both of them. Underworld, Gremory Castle. The leaders of the factions and the DXD group could be seen, while they demanded the location of Biku, Arthur and Sona, along with their peerage. Surziches. Sona Citri, you know that hiding Issei's location is considered treason. He said seriously. Sona. I don't think so, Meo Lucifer, he answered seriously. Surziches. What do you mean? He asked confused. Sona. You cannot demand the location of a human, since we are forbidden to force even a human to serve us. She said, which left the Meo Lucifer speechless. Seraphol. But we must have a peace pact with the Securitate. He said an excuse. Sona. Stop making excuses, what you really want is your power. She said angrily. While Ryu watched all this with an angry grimace, since everything he built is now just rubble, since his brother was useless and he deserved everything for being a dragon. Ryu. You should have died, you fucking useless trash. He said in his thoughts. Meeting day. The leaders of the factions could be seen, accompanied by the DXD team, who were at Kuo Academy, to which everyone was impatient, in that they heard the footsteps of people, to which Surziches thought they were going to have permission. When opening the door, you could see a girl with crimson hair and violet eyes, who was too beautiful of those who were present, which was Mio. Mio. Very good afternoon, Mao Lucifer and Mao Leviathan. He said seriously as he entered, but behind them came two hooded men. Surziches. It's a pleasure to meet Wilbert's daughter. He said with a small smile. Mio. It is also an honor to meet you, just like the leader of the angels, the fallen, the god of Asgard and the dragon goddess of infinity. She said seriously, but Gabriel could see her heart for a moment, which shows disgust at to be in front of them, but that feeling disappears in an instant. After that welcome, Mio sat down. The table was round, but several people had different thoughts, among them was Ryu. Ryu. That girl is very beautiful, I must join her to my harem. He said in his thoughts, while thinking thoughts that were not at all holy. While the leaders were talking about peace, Mio could be seen, who had an annoyed look. Mio. What do you need me for? She asked in an annoyed tone, to which Seraphol gave a sad sigh. Seraphol. We need a permit that allows us to enter your father's territory. He said seriously. Mio. Seriously, they are demanding a permit from me, as if I were their pet. He said angrily, which scared the leaders. Surziches. I'm sorry for how I said it, Seraphol-san, we ask you to please let us enter your territory for a while, Mao Lucifer apologized, to which Mio thought for a moment. Mio. So that he wanted the permission. He said with curiosity. Ryu. It's for the search for my useless brother, I still don't know why they need it, if they have me. He said arrogantly, which annoyed Mio. Mio. I'm sorry, but I can't give permission to enter my father's territory. He said seriously, which surprised the leaders. Enemu? What do you mean? He asked, unable to believe it. Mio. I will not give permission to enter my father's territory. He repeated with annoyance. Azazel. We can know the reasons. He said curiously. Mio. I'm not going to allow them to enter, since let's be honest, some devils will go with those pieces of slavery and try to join their peerage to my people. He said seriously, which annoyed Riaz, while Sona saw this with a smile of satisfaction. Surziches. I promise you that only we leaders and a small group will go to look for this person. He said, which Mio did not believe them. Mio. In that case, what person would they be talking about? He said seriously. Gabriel. We're talking about the Securitate. He said, which annoyed the two hooded men, and Mio clenched her fists in anger. Mio. No, you had on your side the strongest evil dragon, the Dragon Queen, the only one stronger than the Dragon King, besides the white heavenly dragon, you need another dragon to follow your orders. He said seriously, which left the leaders silent. Gabriel. That's not true. He defended the leaders. Leo. I don't understand Seraph and Gabriel why he defends them, besides, the kindest person will always have bad intentions. He said, which Gabriel was going to deny. If I don't believe it, I'll give an example. One of those people is Ryu. He stole the achievements of his brother. He made everyone believe that his younger brother is a pervert. You could read his heart, but it seems that he was disgusted or he just never cared about me. He said seriously, which Gabriel began to cry, since those Hades said the same words to him. Michael. I'm not going to allow you to talk to my sister like that. He said seriously, to which one of the hooded men began to laugh, which annoyed the leaders. Momo. Seriously, I still can't believe that the Seraphim with the purest heart plus an innocent attitude was so stupid and also needed someone to feel loved. She said, which the leaders realized was a woman. Griselda. I will not allow you to speak to my lady like that. She said, to which Mio looked at them with pity. Leo. I understand that the sky carries alarms to know who has impure thoughts. He said with a smile, which Gabriel would feel like they break his heart. According to the Sekirute, he told me that the alarms never had a complaint in the sky, while his brother Ryu always had complaints, but everyone thought it was because he carried an evil dragon, but his face showed disgusting thoughts. He said as if nothing had happened, which Michael and Gabriel couldn't deny. Seraph Gabriel wanted to justify herself, but it seemed that no words came out of her mouth, while Michael, the leader of the angels, clenched his hands into fists, out of frustration at not being able to say anything. Leo. It seems I'm right. He said with a mocking smile. Azazel. We can offer you whatever you want to let us go to your territory. He said with a victorious smile, which bothered Mio more, and she was not the only one. But he was wrong, since Mio began to give off an aura that was close to that of a Mau, but her gaze was cold, which could freeze anyone she wanted. Leo. Damn it. She muttered, while her hair covered her eyes. Before everyone's gaze, but in that an aura of hatred and bloodlust could be seen in one of the hooded men. Issei. Those assholes. To think that she would sell her people. He shouted angrily, but his aura was on par with Surzich's in his devil form. Everyone was surprised by this display of power, but it could be seen that Officer Cerberus looked at him intently, but that expressionless face did not reflect any of that, it only reflected sadness. Office. It's you, Issei. She said sadly, while the leaders were surprised. Issei. It seems that I can't be at peace for a moment. Then Issei gazed at Office. That's right, Goddess Cerberus, I am Issei Haidu. He said, while removing his hood, revealing that brown hair. Everyone was surprised to see that Issei was there. Everyone had a different look, some of joy, sadness, nostalgia and hatred. Ryu was watching all this with hatred, as the girls who he claimed belonged to him paid more attention to his brother. Ryu. Asshole, you would have stayed dead. He said, which surprised everyone. Issei. Why? He asked with a mocking smile, which annoyed his brother more, while his sister had tears in her eyes when she saw her brother. Ryu. Why you motherfucker? He murmured, but was heard by the leaders. Issei. Ha 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 ha, you're angry because I'm starting to ruin your life. He said with a smile, while his brother began to give off a black aura. Ryu's aura was surpassing Issei's, which brought a smile to Azazel's face. Azazel. Why don't you calm down? He said with a smile. How about Haidu, a rating gamer against your brother? He said as if it were nothing. Issei. No thanks. He said, which surprised Azazel. Michael. Why not Ice-kun? He asked, but at that he earned a look from Issei, which indicated disapproval. Issei. Easy, leader of the angels, I would win, since seeing the crow's look I get an idea. He had insulted Azazel as if it were nothing. Auden. And what would you want if you win the gamer rating? He asked curiously. Issei. Easy, don't bother me, I mean that when someone stronger than you appears, don't go for me to help you and a game of evil pieces. He said, which surprised the leaders, but it seems that I don't end there. But also if he won, I don't want this idiot's fiancés to be mine. He said, which ruined his plans for the leaders. Surzich's. I'm sorry, but I can't. He fell silent, seeing that Issei turned around. Okay, if you win, they won't be your fiancés. Issei. Magnificent. He said with a mocking smile, but no one noticed. Leo. When would the rating gamer be? He asked seriously. Azazel. How about in a moment? He said with a smile, since that way he wouldn't have time to train Issei. Issei. And who will it be against? He asked curiously. Azazel. It will be against Ria's entourage. He said, to which Issei let out a tired sigh. Issei. Okay. He said as if nothing had happened. Time after. The peerage of Ria's Gremory and Issei Haidu could be seen in a replica of Kuo Academy. While in the stands there were people insulting Issei, in the boxes there were everyone, but Mio and Momo saw this with a small smile. "Leo, how long until Drake wakes up?" he asked Momo curiously. This caught the attention of the leaders, but more so that of Office and Azazel, since they had an idea. "Momo, there are 10 minutes left until he wakes up, but with Issei's power at 50%, it would be more than enough," he said, which caught everyone's attention. Start of Rating Gamer. The replica of the Kuo Academy could be seen, while Issei was calm, while the booster gear appears in his left hand. Everyone was surprised, since Hades told them that he was the Sekiryuite, but seeing him in front of them brought a bad taste in their mouths. "Brafia. Nice to meet you, today I will be the referee of this gamer rating," she said, while Ria's entourage began to surround Issei. "Ryu. I'm going to humiliate you, you useless man," he said with an arrogant smile, while those girls who fell in love with him realized their mistakes. "Issei. You will regret underestimating your enemy," he said seriously. "Brafia. I started," he said, to which Ria's entourage did not waste time, to which they began to attack him. Stadium box. Azazel could be seen with a smile, seeing Issei cornered, but Mio and Momo were not worried, but then Office gets up from her place to realize something. "Office. He has awakened," she said expressionlessly, to which everyone understood perfectly. Returning to Rating Gamer. Issei could be seen gaining territory, while Ryu was frustrated, but then his sister gave him a signal to which Ryu got out of the way. "Issei. Take this," she said, while throwing a large ball of energy at him, which was enormous, which scared many. But Issei puts out his left hand, which was surrounded by flames between red and black. "Dreg. Domination flames." Dreg's words were heard, the attack had burned him as if it were nothing, which caught the attention of Albion and Crom Cruch. Ryu was shocked to see his best attack consumed by the flames, while Ria's peerage was dumbfounded. "Issei. What's wrong? A mouse ate your tongue," he said with a mocking smile. But then Kiba and Zenobia start slashing with their swords, which Issei was simply dodging with great ease. Dip room. All the leaders were surprised by the ease with which Issei dodged, but also by the fact that Valeria watched her rival very carefully, but his skills were superior to hers. "Albion. Those flames were sealed by Yahweh. How is it possible?" he said surprised, while the Deem had doubts as to how that was possible. "Momo. You're surprised that Drake is in that state, but well, that's thanks to your host," she said as if nothing had happened, which caught attention. "Azazel. What do you mean?" the leader of the fallen angels asked seriously. "Momo. I have no reason to answer, before you say that I am a devil, and I am under your orders I tell you that it is no longer like that, I became a human again, or should I say a part of me," she said, which each leader noticed. Momo's aura, realizing it, but a part of her was sealed or asleep. "Surziches. How is that possible?" he asked surprised. "Momo. Easy, just change some parts of the resurrection chant and problem solved," he said as if nothing, everyone was more than surprised. At that they heard Drake's voice, but it could be noticed that the booster gear was coming out of the blade of a sword. Returning to the gamer rating, during Momo's conversation. It could be seen that Durandal and Issei's sword when they collided created sparks. Kiba watched the sword carefully, but everyone felt that sensation of the sword, its aura was on par with Durandal, but its potential was not sealed. Like Zenovia's sword. "Zenovia. How can I not break your sword?" she asked confused, to which Issei started laughing. "Issei. Hahaha, this sword, unlike yours, is much more powerful. I do not need to seal the aura of mine, since I must learn to control it and become one with my sword," he said, while jumping into the air and Zenovia puts her sword to protect her. The clash of both swords produced a current of air, but it could be noticed on the ground how a crater began to form. But the sound of something breaking began to be heard, everyone thought it was Issei's sword, but in reality it was Durandal. Everyone was surprised that Zenovia's sword had been destroyed by Issei's sword, but Issei decided to create an energy ball. Issei. Dragon Shoddy launched his attack, when he touched Zenovia it produced an explosion, when the dust rose, you could see Zenovia standing, but you began to hear her body fall to the ground. "Brafia. A knight of Ria's Gremory retires," she said seriously, but inside she was surprised. Everyone in the box, except Mio and Momo, was surprised, but then they saw how Kiba was about to attack him from behind, to which he blocked with his sword, which caused Kiba's sacred demonic sword to break into pieces. "Kiba. What is that sword?" he asked, while creating another sword. "Issei. This sword is the sister of a sword," he said proudly. At that Ria stared at the sword, as did Murayama and Caddis, but you could see that that sword was very dangerous. "Issei. This sword is Excalibur Galatine," he said with a smile. The angels were dumbfounded to know that this sword was the sister of true Excalibur. But they see how he starts to attack at great speed. Everyone thought he didn't know anything about handling a sword. They were more than wrong, or they refused to believe it. Many had doubts about what abilities that sword had, while Gabriel looked closely at Issei, but in his gaze you could see sadness, guilt, and he mentally told himself that he was a monster. Dip room. The leaders could be seen with different expressions. Some had frustration, jealousy and anger at Issei's power, while Afa saw all this with an expressionless face, but inside there was pressure in her chest, as well as sadness and guilt. Michael, how did you get that sword? Was all he could ask. Momo. That sword was given to him by a lady of the lake. She said with a mocking smile, which made the Pendragon siblings' eyes open wide. The Fae. That sword was supposed to be a legend. She said incredulously. Momo. You are completely wrong, that sword was given to him for something they never saw, or maybe it was because they never cared. She said with revulsion to all the girls who treated Issei like trash. Everyone was attentive to the fight between Kiba and Issei, both clashed their sword against the other, but they saw how Issei stopped abruptly, which caused doubts in many. Leo. So he plans to use it. He said with a small smile, but it gave more than one shiver. Returning to the raiding gamer. It could be seen that Issei was closing his eyes, but they saw him raise his sword, which left everyone confused. Issei. Come forth. Sword of Yahweh. Excalibur, also known as the Sword of Victory of the Sun. Unleash your true power. He said with a smile, while making a thrust towards the ground, causing a torrent of energy. The torrent of energy was headed towards Kiba, but he couldn't move due to the shock, but Issei stood in front of him, creating a barrier to protect him, but the attack broke the barrier as if it were paper, destroying with a stab a large part of the replica of the academy. Rafia. A pawn and a knight of Ria's Gremory retreat. She said, frightened by Issei's display of power. All the leaders were scared by the display of power of the current Sekiryu, but they saw that this attack did not contain magic, so they were thinking what energy it was. Dip room. Everyone had doubts, well the leaders wanted answers, but it seems that Mio and Momo were not planning to tell them anything, but then they hear Mio and Momo's conversation. Momo. He held back too much. He said calmly, while those present were beginning to break out in a cold sweat and also had a chill down their spines. Leo. You're right. He said as if nothing had happened. Momo. Why don't I just finish it all at once? She asked doubtfully, which caught the leader's attention. Arthur. So you can use heat waves. He said, which caught the attention of those present. Momo. That's right, but it seems like he held back for some reason. She said, which caught the attention of those present. Arthur. I understand, but it seems that if he uses the other sword, plus Drake's ability, this will be a piece of cake for him. He said, but left the leaders with doubt. Returning to the raiding gamer. They didn't know how to react to this from Ria's peerage, but they see how he stares at Ryu, but then turns to look at Gasper. Issei. Your sacred gear will be annoying. He said, as he launched himself to attack Ryu. His brother was ready when he was in front of him, but before doing so he turned in the air and launched a thrust at Gasper. Everyone was turned to stone, but it was too late to help him. Rifia. A bishop of Ria's Gremory retires everyone in the box, was impressed to see that this simple strategy was able to finish someone off like it was nothing. Issei. It seems that your peerage Gremory-san is weak or that I am very strong. He said with a mocking smile. But then he looks at Roswis with a mocking smile, but they see how he launches himself to attack his brother, but everyone was attentive to such a battle, but some were afraid of this fight, which they said. The fight between a dragon god candidate versus a heavenly dragon. This was because Ryu was a candidate to be a dragon god, many were betting on him, while boos were directed at Issei. The son of the dragon gods is going to humiliate the weak Sekiryu. Everyone thought that Ryu was going to win, but it seems that life had other plans. Before everyone's eyes they saw how Issei and Ryu connected blood. Ryu. Fuck you, die at once. He said, while creating a magic circle. Evil dragon shot a torrent of energy had come out which shot at his brother. But they saw that Issei deflected the attack with his bare hands, but they see that Issei was smiling mockingly, which annoyed Ryu, who launched himself to attack him, while Ryu gave him a shower of blows, Issei was letting himself be hit by those attacks. But then Ryu decides to summon Ascalon, where Issei smiles, before Ryu stabs him with his sword, Issei decides to summon his dragon wings and fly backwards. Ryu. Ha 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 ha, it seems like you're afraid of my sword. He said with a mocking smile. But then they start to make fun of Issei, thinking that he had already won the victory, but Ryu decides to end this, he jumps into the air to stab and split his brother in two. Plunk. But then they heard the sound of two swords clashing against each other, only to see a sword over 2 meters long, which Issei was using as a shield. But Ryu's attack was repelled by Issei. Prom Krua. Fool. Back away, that sword can be lethal to us. The voice of the evil dragon could tell the fear. Ryu. What sword is it? He asked, but he felt the aura of that sword give him goosebumps. Promkra. That sword is Berserk, a dragon slayer, that sword is stronger than Graham and Ascalon. He said, which was heard by everyone, knowing that said sword was possessed by his useless brother. Issei. What's wrong? You're already scared. He said with a smile. Ryu, in an act of cowardice, uses the power of office that his body had in order to destroy that sword, but he sees how his brother wields it and attacks him. The sword Ascalon versus the sword Berserk, to know which sword was the strongest. Issei. Drake transfers some enhancements to the sword. He mentally told Drake. Drake. Boost 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 transfer. I had done 20 Drake boosts to the sword, which the aura of the sword was too big. Ascalon started to have cracks, but in that you hear how it is breaks into pieces. Issei's attack continued until he cut off Ryu's right arm. Ryu. Ah, he screamed in pain, while bleeding. Issei saw all this with satisfaction, seeing that he was paying one of the people who cut off his arm, and then he saw how it began to disappear, just like his arm, but then Issei decides to destroy his brother's arm. Issei. Ultimate Dragon Shot. Issei's attack disintegrated his brother's arm. Raphia. A pawn of Rhea's Gremory retreats. Everyone had surprising reactions upon learning that Issei defeated their brother, who possessed a body with the flesh and blood of Great Red and the power of Office, 2 of the 3 dragon gods. Everyone was surprised by the power of the weakest Sekiryu, a title that all the inhabitants of the different mythologies had given him. Issei. Let's continue with the fight. He said with a smile, while in his left hand was True Excalibur and in his right hand was Berserk. Dip room. All the leaders were scared. They feared the Sekiryu because he not only humiliated their brother, but destroyed not 1 but 2 legendary swords with the swords that the Sekiryu carried. Auden. Oi, how did the brat get stronger? He asked Mio, but she raises an eyebrow. Leo. Auden don't know, if you want respect, you must respect others, and I won't tell you anything from him. She said seriously, while leaving the leader of the Asgardians with the word in his mouth. Everyone was stunned to see how Mio had reproached the Norse god, while Momo observes all this with an analytical look, but directs her gaze to the council elders, who were too upset. Seraphol. I demand that you tell me what Ice-chan did. He said seriously, which bothered his sister Sona and other people. Leo. You can't demand anything from me, since I don't belong to this stupid hierarchy, and also because now you come to me to ask for answers from. Ice-kun, if before I was just a nuisance for all of you. She said furiously, which made him move away. The look at Seraphol, like all the leaders of any faction. Momo. You never helped him, only. Sona-sama's entourage, Mirana, Biku, Sun Wukong, Arthur and I. She said with an angry voice, while her hair covered her eyes, as she clenched her hands, which would begin to bleed, while the leaders could not say anything. But they could see tears falling from Momo's face to the ground, while the leaders had no justification, so they looked for an excuse. Council Elder Leader. You have no say or vote to say what is right or what is wrong. He said arrogantly, which began to bother Mio seeing how her harem sister was treated. Mio. I'm not going to allow you to disrespect him, 1 more insult, and you'll see that I'm not going to stay with my arms crossed. She said angrily, while giving off an aura on par with Seraphol. This scared the elders, seeing the display of their power, but Momo was not far behind. She gave off an aura equal to that of Surzich's in his base state. Everyone was stunned to see how they had that power. Elder of the council. How do they have that power? He asked scared, while the other elders were angry when they saw how some random people, in his words, had that power instead of them. Momo. This was with the help of Issei. The leaders sent him on suicide missions. I always accompanied him with Mirana, Ria, Tsubaki and Tomo. He said, which left everyone frozen, but they had doubts if they had that same power close to it. But they felt everyone's gaze, which they completely ignored, while Seraphol, Elmenhold, Valerie, Yusaka and Gabriel remembered the suicide missions to a certain brown hair boy. Surzich's. Mio-chan, you should calm down. He said nervously, but then Mio gave him an icy look. Leo. You don't give me orders, unlike stupid Ryu. He got his power with effort, he fulfilled the missions, he just wanted to receive a thank you, but it seems that not even that. He was referring to the current Sekiryu, which he did feeling like leaders suck. Returning to the rating gamer. The replica of the academy was completely destroyed, but it could be seen that Issei was acting as if nothing had happened, while Rhea's Gremory's entourage had been cut, while Leasia was too exhausted from healing all her wounds. Issei. Accept your defeat Gremory, since this is training for me. He said mockingly, which annoyed Rhea's, who threw the power of destruction at him, but she saw how Issei with Berserk deflected it, sending the attack into a building. Rhea's. Damn it. She said, while thinking that the brunette had underestimated her. Issei. In that case, I'm going to show you my power. he said with a smile, while a torrent of red energy covered the brown-haired boy. Dreg. Welsh dragon. Forbidden. Balance breaker. Saying those words, a red armor covered Issei's body, while the torrent of energy disappears. Before everyone's gaze was the Security's armor, but the power it gave off was superior to Ryu's balance breaker. Issei. In that case, let's rock. Bitch. He said while attacking them. First they attacked Roswis together with Kaneko, Shirin, but it seemed like the first was trying to defend with magical barriers. Dreg. Penetrate, he said, to which he hit Roswis as if it were nothing, sending her crashing into a tree. Rias, Akeno, Kaneko, Yui and Kaori were surprised by Issei's ability. They were scared, but they watched as Issei began to concentrate all his energy in his chest, while the gem began to shine. Dreg. Boost 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 boost. Issei's energy began to increase. The aura of the attack was amazing. Issei, Dreg. Long Ina Smasher penetrate. That attack was headed towards Ria's entourage. They all tried to put up a magical barrier to resist the magical attack, but it pierced it like nothing. Issei's attack made the pocket dimension collapse. He remained in the dimension until he heard. Raphia. 2 pawns, 2 rooks, 1 bishop, the queen and Ria's Gremory retreat. Announced, to which Issei raised his hand in victory. Everyone could not believe that the person who was mocked, made less of, and the torture he received unjustly, was victorious. Dip room. Mio, Momo, began to applaud, while the entourage of Sona, Marana, Biku, Arthur and Sun Wukong joined them. The council elders were furious to see that they could not have the power of the Securitate on their side, while Issei flew towards the box. Leo. It seems that Ice-kun was right about them lacking something, that's why their power won't be able to pass those barriers. He said mockingly, which made the leaders think, except for the people who didn't turn their backs on Issei. And that they see the brown-haired man enter, but you could see satisfaction in his look, but he sees how the elders of the council were frustrated, of which he got an idea. Issei. I hope you keep your words, leaders. He said seriously, while Surziches just lowers his head. Surziches. Come in a month to create your evil pieces. He said, to which he approached Mio, who created a transportation magic circle. Issei. Okay. He said, as he approaches, while Mio and Momo were waiting for him. Some people, more specifically all the girls from the factions, wanted to say something to the brunette, but it seemed like they couldn't, to which he disappeared when he was in the magic circle. Nobody said anything, while some like Lord Gremory with his wife, went to see how the aforementioned was, while Sona retired with her peerage, without saying a comment, like Sun Wukong, Biku and Arthur. It seems that karma was going to make them pay in the worst way. 2 weeks later. 2 weeks had passed for the factions, time in which Rias woke up with her peerage. Issei had a burn on her shoulder. Asia's sacred gear did not work, so she hid it with a sweater with magic, while Kiba saw his best creation, the holy demonic sword, as the most interesting. While it comes to his mind how the brown-haired boy broke it as if it were nothing. Zenobia saw the pieces of her sword, while frustration was on her face when she saw how weak it was, but it seems that the worst one who took it was Ryu. He could not recover his arm. This frustrated him. He also wanted revenge for what his brother had done to him. The rest of the peerage tried to cheer them up. Since Issei was the one who took the suicide missions, there were many, but it seems that many ended up injured, with one less limb or even dead. Valeria the White Empress was remembering how she did less to the brown-haired boy, but also how she ended the rivalry with the Securitate. Gabriel blames herself while she is in the twin room, crying her eyes out, wondering if she should remain an angel or become a fallen, as well as thinking what her father would say to her if he were alive. Seraphil was depressed while she is at her parents' house, more specifically locked in her room crying, while her show is on pause. It is not known when it will air again. All of these were examples of how each one began to suffer after realizing how important Issei was to the factions. Little by little, the soldiers of the factions were dying one by one while doing the brown-haired man's missions, according to them that they were nothing, how wrong they were. Meanwhile, on the part of the Germany faction, everything began to improve to the point that they were taking territories abandoned by the other factions over the years, which increased its reputation. You could see a very beautiful house where there was a red-haired woman, a white-haired woman and Issei, who were resting in peace. Leo. Issei, do you think the factions are trying something against you? She said scared. Issei. Don't worry, if something happens they'll have to deal with me. He said with a smile. Momo. But it seems that they will try a play against you, so that you join their ranks. She said seriously, to which Issei could only give a sigh of tiredness. Momo was right, but Issei was cautious against the factions, but he knew that they would look for a way to prevent Issei from cutting ties with the factions, more specifically a certain Mao Siskin. Issei. Yes, but it is better to be cautious against them. He said seriously, while in his left hand he appeared to have the booster gear. Greg. It seems that my partner had a great weight in the features. He said mockingly, but it was true. Leo. You're right, but I feel like something big is coming. She said seriously, while Issei started to think. Issei. I hope it's for the best. He said seriously, but Momo felt a presence in the window. When she turned around there was nothing. Leo. What's wrong, Momo? He asked doubtfully. Momo. I felt like someone was watching us, she said, while looking away from the window. Underworld. More specifically in the Gremory Castle, the leaders of the angel faction, fallen angels, Asgard, vampires, yokai and devils, could be seen in a room. Isaka. We have lost many soldiers. He said, to which all the leaders were serious about the subject. Azazel. It seems so. Who would say that the missions he did were the worst suicide missions? He said, to which some lowered their heads in regret. Office. What is this feeling? She asked herself mentally, while bringing her hand to her chest. Auden. There must be a way not to lose more of our people. He said, while remembering the corpses of his soldiers. Surziches. I don't think we'll find one for a while. He said, while remembering that he asked Ria, Tsubaki and Tomo to do a mission, but they had rejected it, saying that they were doing it only to protect Issei and Momo's back. Michael. I agree with you. He said, while remembering that he asked Marana for a mission, but she decided to ignore him, to which she sent other soldiers, most of whom died. Elmenhold. It seems that the only solution is to find more allies. He said seriously, which earned an affirmation from everyone. All the leaders were looking for a way to see who else could be their ally, but they knew that the German faction was not going to help them, so they only had two factions to ask for help. Surziches. For the moment we have to move on to another topic. He said seriously, to which he caught everyone's attention. Azazel. What would it be? He asked with great curiosity. Surziches. The marriage of those present with the host of Krom Krua. He said, to which he made Yusaka and Elmenhold sad, well they wanted it to be with the host of Drake. Michael. It seems so, but both my sister and Irina are in a delicate state. He said with a sad expression, remembering how they cried, and how they blamed themselves for believing her to be someone who only wants fame. Surziches. There is no way to stop this anymore. He said, to which everyone agreed. Michael. We can only wait. He said, while squeezing his hands in frustration, knowing what fate awaits his sister and his ace. Auden. There must be a way we can stop this. He said, but I knew the only way was from a raiding gamer, but there had to be a person strong enough to defeat him, and the only one was the Sekiryuite, but they knew that he was going to refuse. The days had passed, the girl's wedding was going to be in 3 weeks, the Sekiryuite was going to come for the Evil Pieces game, that was the alarm that the countdown was going to begin. They knew very well that that was going to be the only opportunity to convince the Sekiryuite. Since the notice of the marriage was given, many were happy, including the Council of Elders, while the girls were depressed, knowing that they were not going to marry the Sekiryuite, while Ryu was enjoying his victory, but he knew very well that this was a way to get revenge on his brother. 2 weeks later. It could be seen that the brown-haired boy is preparing to travel to the underworld, for which he is accompanied by both Mio and Momo. The which Momo created a magical transportation circle. Upon arriving they could see that they were in Gremory territory, to which Issei took a look, but after a moment he decided to walk to the entrance, while behind him both Momo and Mine. When he arrived he could see the arrangements of some houses, but he could see that many were happy. He could hear that Riaz was going to get married, to which Issei downplayed the importance. Leo. Everyone should be very happy about the marriage, he had commented. Momo. It seems that way. She said, while downplaying it. Upon reaching a certain point, Issei could see many happy people, but some families were sad. Woman. Did you know that the Sekiryuite did those suicide missions? A serious woman said to her friend. Woman. How? She said surprised. Woman. That's right, but they also say they're going to ask for his help for something. She said, to which Issei had an idea. Those were just a few examples of what the women of the Gremory territory talked about. This was also heard by Mio and Momo. They had finally arrived at Gremory Castle, to which Issei stared at the entrance, where Surziches, Auden, Azazel and Michael were standing. Issei. Now yes, I have come for those pieces. He said, to which Surziches knew that the Sekiryuite did not come to play. Surziches. Okay, we have to go with Ajuka. He said, and then create a magic circle. The leaders, such as Issei, Momo and Mio, appear in a kind of laboratory, which is where Ajuka approaches. Ajuka. So you've come, for the process I need you to create a ball of energy the size of a soccer ball. He said, to which Issei just sighed tiredly. Issei. Okay. He said, while a red sphere began to form in his hand. You could see how dense it was, but the power they felt from that sphere was tremendous. Ajuka. Now just give it to me to create your set of evil pieces. He said, to which Issei handed it to him, to which he withdrew with a sphere. Issei. How long will it take? I asked Serziches. Serziches. More or less an hour. He said, to which Issei let out a tired sigh. Issei. Perfect. He said sarcastically. Michael. Ice-kun. He said, to which Issei frowns. Why do you need a game of evil pieces? He asked, to which he caught the attention of those present, except for Mio and Momo. Issei. I don't see the need to say it, since I'm not attached to your factions, I only came for what I rightfully earned. He said sharply, to which they knew that the brown-haired boy held a grudge against them. Serziches. And what do you think about the girl's marriage? He asked, thinking that Issei disagreed. Issei. I don't care, they themselves decided to love Ryu, now it's my turn to be happy with someone else. He said. Serziches had not expected that. Azazel. You really don't care about them anymore. He said incredulously. Issei. That's right, I don't care what happens to them, just like you, they decided to make my life impossible, so they themselves took it upon themselves to kill all the feelings I had for them. He said seriously, well the leaders knew that the Sekiryu was not going to lift a single finger to help them. Auden. So brat, what plans do you have now? He said, to which Issei formed a smile, which gave the leaders a bad feeling. Issei. That's easy, I plan to start my own family with the people I love, in addition to having children. He said, to which the leaders wanted to refute him, but they couldn't. Serziches. I understand. Was the only thing he said, knowing that he couldn't count on Issei's help to break that marriage, everything the leaders had planned had been taken away in the trash can. After that awkward conversation, Issei could be seen talking to Mio and Momo, but on the other side the leaders were sad knowing what awaits their sisters, friends and servants. Next to Issei's brother. Time after. Bajuka could be seen leaving with a wooden box, on top of which a note could be seen. Bajuka. Here are your evil pieces, Issei, as well as some notes about your pieces. She said, to which Issei became curious. As he got closer he could see his evil pieces, but their color was different, they were a red hue, but you could see that the pieces seemed to be made of crystal. You could see how delicate the pieces were, but the power they radiated was that of a mutated piece, which Issei decided to ignore, while he looked at Rei's piece, to which Issei took it in his hands, and a chant came to his mind. I am the Sekiryu who will rise to the top, help me fulfill my dreams, just like you, I will help you fulfill your dreams. After reciting that chant, the king piece entered Issei, where behind him rose his two red wings. After a moment Issei decided to hide his wings, but he saw the queen piece, to which Issei made a decision. Issei. Momo-chan, do you want to be my queen? He asked one of his girlfriends, to which Momo didn't think twice. Momo. Yes, I want to be your queen. She said, to which Issei handed her the queen piece, where Momo placed it near her chest. I, the Sekiryu who will rise to the top, ask you Momo Hanakai to fulfill my dreams, just like you, I will help you fulfill your dreams. At that, the queen piece entered Momo's chest, and after a moment, two white dragon wings emerged from her back. But the aura of power that Momo gave off increased until it surpassed Serziches in his base state, surpassing his power, until her aura was on par with Serziches in his devil form at 50%. 21 days before Ryu's wedding. Everything was sadness knowing that the Sekiryu was not going to lift a finger. When they learned this news, Ryu's harem was destroyed, the sad faces, the tears did not wait. Thus could be seen, in a mountainous area where Issei began to reflect on what his life had been, while tears began to come out of his eyes, while he could only say, hold on a little longer, heart. But inside the booster gear, more specifically, in the depths of it, a magic circle could be seen, but around it, there were 18 magic circles of which floating flames could be seen. Flames were blank, 6 flames they had a different color, except for the last 6 flames, which little by little were going out, but their color was completely black. But little by little he remembered where certain girls were by his side, being of these 5 girls, not counting Momo and Mio. He could see how they trusted him, how they covered his back, while a small smile appeared on his face. While in different places, more specifically in heaven, Gregory, Asgard, Underworld, Teep's territory and Karnstein. You could see Ryu's fiancés, each one in his room, looking through the window, but in his eyes, you could see the pain, sadness and disappointment towards themselves. 20 days before the wedding. You could see how Michael was preparing the heaven system, where he made certain modifications, where the devils would one day be allowed to hear the word gods without receiving any damage. But his look was one of guilt, helplessness and anger. Ryu was too happy, while Ria's entourage was happy, but sometimes they remembered each event, realizing that in reality it was Issei who always sacrificed everything he had to be victorious, but it seems that his ego made them choose to the wrong person. Issei's sister Issei was watching all this with regret, having been a participant in helping Ryu. She blamed herself for lying that Issei was useless, for ending Arena and Issei's friendship. That day was just the beginning of knowing that everything they had built together with Ryu was for their own benefit, but sometimes life can help you, but it can also screw things up. Mio had planned something to rub salt into the wound, an interview in the human world. It was enough for it to spread throughout the world, but you may wonder what this news was. Mio Naros, daughter of the businessman and leader of the Naros clan, is engaged to a young man from Japan. That news had achieved its purpose, which was to know that Issei was happy with Mio. 19 days before the wedding. The news had spread like wildfire, first reaching Italy where Irina's family was, along with Griselda Quarta, Giulio Gesualdo and Marana Shadorova. But when Irina and Zenobia were visiting their parents, sister, the news completely devastated them both. Flashback. Irina could be seen arriving home, accompanied by Zenobia, but it could be seen that when they arrived, Giulio, Griselda and Marana were there. She had headphones on, pretending that she was listening to music. Irina. Dad, we've arrived. She said, while her father got nervous. Irina's father. You weren't in Kuo, why didn't you tell me? He asked nervously, while his wife hid the magazine about Issei and Mio's engagement. Irina. I wanted to give them a surprise, and mother will help me choose my dress for the wedding. She had said the last thing while trying to keep her smile. Irina's mother. Of course. She said happily, but inside she was nervous. Zenobia. I also hope to have you, Griselda, faking a smile. But then Marana plays a video in which they broadcast the news that Mio and Momo were Issei's fiancés, unlike the news from the human world, but then she disconnects her headphones. Announcer. In the latest news, the Devil faction in Germany announces the future marriage between the current Sekiryu, along with the daughter of the leader of said faction, in addition to him also marrying a girl named Momo Hanakai. She said, along which everyone got nervous, while Irina and Zenobia were paralyzed. It's surprising that Issei Haidu is here with us to give us the exclusive. He said, but inside Irina and Griselda. Turn that off, Marana. She said, to which Marana was going to pause the video. Irina, Zenobia. No. They said, which surprised everyone. In that they decide to approach to see the video, but in that they see how Issei appears, but he did not come alone, he was accompanied by his two girlfriends. Announcer. It's a pleasure to have you here with us, Issei, in addition to your two fiancés. He said respectfully, while extending his hand in greeting. Issei. The pleasure is mine. He while reciprocating the handshake. It could be seen how the brown-haired boy was sitting on a sofa, on his right side was Momo, and on the left was Mio, both were sitting next to him. Announcer. I'm still surprised that someone of your stature is getting married. He said, to which Irina and Zenobia felt a dagger buried in their hearts. Issei. Well, believe it, besides I'm very happy to marry them. He said happily. Announcer. Can I ask you something personal? He said, to which Issei nodded. Do you intend to have more partners? He asked, which caught everyone's attention. Issei. The truth is not lost, but I can only tell you honestly, let life itself decide, but I will only be with someone who truly loved me. He said sincerely. Sorry if it sounds selfish. He had apologized, but he was right. As this was being observed, both Irina and Zenobia felt that they still had a small chance. Announcer. Don't worry, but don't take what I'm going to tell you the wrong way. He said sadly. I thought you were going to have more fiancés, for example the Mao Leviathan, the Seraphim Gabriel or the Cadre Penemu. He said, to which everyone who was watching the video nodded. Momo. It would have been like that, but. She said it would be, to which the announcer made a sign with his hand for her to continue. Each one of them lost something. She said with an emotionless voice. Announcer. Could you tell me, what was it that they lost? He asked curiously. Momo. They lost interest in Issei, they preferred a pretty face, an arrogant, a womanizer, a disappointment of a person, for someone who gave his life to save them no matter what. He said, to which Irina and Zenobia listened to every word, which for them were a bullet. Announcer. That's understandable, but there has to be something else, isn't it like that? He was right, seeing Mio's serious look, as well as a look that froze everyone with fear, on Momo's part. Mio. He's right, he gave his life for them, he sacrificed every part of him, just to see them safe, but since they paid him back, all that gratitude went to someone else. She said seriously, but those words felt like poison. Announcer. And what do you think about this, Issei? I asked the current Sekiryu. Issei. There is no greater disappointment than that which comes from someone who you thought was different. He said, his look was one of disappointment directed at certain people. Announcer. I understand, but let's move on to his future marriage. He said, but Irina and Zenobia were shattered knowing that the brunette is no longer interested in anything that comes from the factions. Irina and Zenobia saw how they began to talk about their engagement, but they saw something that hurt them more, that loving smile of the brown-haired boy that was directed at Mio and Momo, but not at them. Verona not only stopped there, but she showed the video by accident to Gabriel. 11. That same night they heard the crying of their daughter, sister, Lady. All this seemed like a punishment for them, but it seems Issei was happy without them. Days go by, 12 days until the wedding. The engagement of both Ryu and Issei became the news of the century in the supernatural world, since a forbidden entity that was Ryu attracted the attention of many, but it does not compare with Issei, who with his own effort surpassed Ryu's power. Kaido residence. Issei could be seen looking at herself in the mirror, but she was looking at the wound that Issei caused her, but her gaze was completely lost, while memories come to her mind of how Issei protected her when she was a child, but she paid him back by destroying his reputation in front of others, the blows he gave her. According to her, to make him enter reason and discipline, so that he would stop being a pervert, but that was enough to make her cry. Without saying anything else, he adjusted his clothes as he left his room and went through the hallway to go straight to the elevator, but after walking down that hallway, it felt like forever. You might wonder why. That mansion where he lived. The Grimoire entourage, the Maya Leviathan, the Seraphim Gabriel, Penemu the Cadre, Michael's Ace, Ravel Phoenix, Elemental Karnstein, Valerie Teeps, Valeria's team and her entourage were not there, they had gone to their respective homes. Some on a trip to entertain themselves and others were walking around Kuo. Issei. I didn't want this to happen. She said, so that her voice echoed through the halls of that mansion. She could only fall to her knees, just to cry. Only that cry could be heard, but in Kuo City, you could see Ingvild Leviathan, who was walking until she reached the park, where Rainer killed Issei, just to see the fountain, seeing its reflection, but when she saw herself she could only see a monster which was herself. It seems that power can corrupt even the purest heart, but sometimes happiness is right in front of your nose, but you don't realize it until it's too late. Meanwhile, on the other side of Japan, a girl could be seen with purple hair and blue-green eyes. In the words of many, she was a goddess, but they were not literally wrong, since that girl named Saori Kido was the reincarnation of the goddess Athena, but she appears to be 18 years old. She was walking home, but memories of one of her friends came to her mind. He had brown hair and amber eyes. She remembered how he approached her to invite her to play. Saori. What are you doing, Issei? She asked herself, while a current of air passed near her, so that her hair moved with the wind. Germany faction. An underworld could be seen just like that of the Kuo Devil faction, but this one was older, with that touch of elegance, but a road could be seen, but inside it, you could see that Mio, Momo and Issei were inside it. But in addition to that, you could see the footsteps of the horses that were pushing the cart. Issei. Why would you call us? He asked doubtfully. Mio. He just said that it was of the utmost importance to be present. He said, but he was also curious as to why they were called to call. Momo. I'm curious why you needed us. She said curiously. But when they arrived home, they could see several devils at the entrance, but they found it curious to see how they were dressed. The men wore tuxedos, and the women wore evening dresses, but the cart went to the back entrance of the castle. At that point the cart stopped, but when he opened it everyone got out calmly. In front of him were two maids, who bowed to those present. Maid. Ladies, would you be so kind as to follow me? She said, to which Mio and Momo nodded. Maid. And you young man would be so kind as to follow me? She said, to which Issei made a sign to guide him through the castle. Both Momo, Mio and Issei took different paths, but the sound of footsteps could be heard in that castle. 10 days to the wedding. Issei could be seen walking very calmly. 2 days ago his engagement had been celebrated with the two girls who stole his heart. But it could be seen that Issei was walking very calmly through that city that was the place where he was born. He was marginalized, humiliated, among other things, but nobody knew he was there, not even the alliance of the factions. But as he remembered, he had arrived at that abandoned church where he found a person who was very well known to him, who was asleep on a bench, but inside the booster gear, Drake only saw the scene with a look of disappointment. While Issei hides his aura and presence. Issei. Goodbye, I hope you are happy. He said, so that a treacherous tear came out. But in the depths of the booster gear, it could be seen that magic circle surrounded by 18 flames, one of the black flames had been extinguished, but a small purple flame came out. It seemed that Issei had barely overcome that rejection from Asia. I don't want to be friends with a rapist. Ryu is a better person than you. I'd rather be next to people who are by my side than next to a pervert. I thought you were different from the others, but it seems I was wrong. It seemed that Asia had fallen asleep after having prayed for a long time. One sign were her knees, which were bleeding, but then she heard a whisper, thanks to her devil senses, which said goodbye. She got up as best she could, turning to the entrance, but there was no one there. Hours later. Issei could be seen eating at that restaurant where he paid for Irina and Zenovia's food when they were on the mission to recover the Excalibur, but every time he remembered Irina his chest hurt, he didn't know why, but it hurt. Issei. Irina. he said in his thoughts, but little by little the image of Irina was erasing from his mind. Greg. I'm sorry, partner, but they don't deserve your tears, it's time for you to seek your happiness, he said to himself, but behind him a scarlet seal could be seen. But the strange thing about this seal was that it was spreading on its own, returning to Issei. You could see how he was calming down. Issei. It's better to go, I don't want to cause trouble for those two. He said with a smile, while getting up from the table, leaving a few yen, and then leaving the store. It seems that no one realized what he was there, but you could see that there was a child behind, but with his hand he was saying goodbye, but he was disappearing, but with a real smile. 9 days until the wedding. It is said that girls have always wanted to get married, but it seems that not many are like that. The discomfort of those present could be seen. Why? It was simple, all of Ryu's fiancés were at one of his girls' meetings. Zenobia. It won't be long now, right? She asked, but it wasn't with a dreamy tone, but rather there was fear, sadness in her voice. Asia. Hi. He said with a forced smile, but you could see his mood on the ground. Lemenhold. Do you all have your dresses yet? Her question sounded dry. They might wonder why they couldn't oppose the marriage. The reason was simple, both the council elders had given a reason, rather an order, which was. Their children will be very powerful, especially as they are a combination of different races. It seems that they only wanted them as incubators, this was before they knew what kind of person Ryu is. So their parents, sisters and themselves thought, but for their own benefits. Back to the girls' reunion. Riaz. Have you had any progress with Ryu? She asked, trying to pretend that their relationship was working, but everyone shook their heads. Sona. Trouble in paradise. She said sarcastically, which made everyone turn around, only to see her leaning against a wall. Isaka. What are you doing here? She asked angrily, because Sona took her away from her Issei. Sona. Me. She said sarcastically, while pointing at herself, which annoyed the yokai even more. Seraful. Sona-san, if you're going to be bothering me, it's better that you leave. Said Sarah, thinking that it was she who took her away from Issei, since she didn't want to be reminded of what her actions caused. Sona. But I didn't do anything to make them upset with me, but I remember it was their own actions, and before you tell me that it wasn't on purpose, then tell me a reason why you believed stupid Ryu. He said it would be, but as you could hear the anger in their voice, but none of them answered. So they won't say anything, but it's clear to me, they preferred a pretty face to a person who would give everything for the woman they love. They were all silent. It seems that Sona was right. When they saw Ryu's true face, the leaders and themselves were disappointed for being hypocrites and scumbags. But you could see on the faces of some girls the resignation to accept whatever was going to happen to them as their punishment. Sona. Well, I just came to wish you luck. She said with a mocking smile as she turned around, but before crossing the door, she turned to look at them. This is your punishment. She said, then left and closed the door behind her. They all remained silent, some tried to deceive their hearts by knowing what fate awaits them, but it seems that the tears did not wait. Irina. Nobody likes stupid Issei-san, right? She said, to which many began to laugh to deceive their hearts, but those laughs turned into tears, pleas for forgiveness from Issei. 7 days to the wedding. The leaders of the factions could be seen, but Ryu was with a look of superiority, but next to him was Riaz with a forced smile and his entourage behind him. Serziches. Well, as I was telling you, the Greek faction decided to agree to ally with us. He said, to which several people were happy, among them were Michael and Auden. Michael. That's good news. He said happily, knowing that he could count on these people's help. Serziches. But it seems that they will not accept very quickly. He said seriously, which made those present uncomfortable. Azazel. What do you mean? He asked seriously. Serziches. It seems that Athena disagrees with this, to which Zeus is hesitant to accept the alliance. He said, to which many knew that Athena had an ability equal to Gabriel's. Seraphol. And if we try to reach some kind of agreement with Athena-chan or offer something she wants in exchange for her help. Said the Mao Leviathan. Serziches. That's where the problem is. He said, which left those present confused. Isaka. What do you mean? She asked confused. Serziches. We searched for her, but it seems that she may possibly become our enemy. He said, which left everyone surprised. Azazel. Why do you say that? He asked doubtfully. Serziches. Because of him. He said, pointing at Ryu, which left everyone confused. Ryu. Me, but if I don't do anything to Athena, I don't even know her. He said as if nothing. Serziches. That's where you're wrong, besides you weren't the only one, there were also Ria-san, Sona-san, Isari-san and Irina-san. He said seriously, which caused more than one curiosity, and those mentioned doubt. But before they could say anything, Surziches created a magic circle from which a folder came out, which he decided to give to his sister, but Riaz, upon opening the folder, was left with her mouth open and in shock, seeing the image. Riaz. She's Athena. She said in shock, while Issei, Irina and Ryu had an expression equal to Riaz, while Sona had a nostalgic look upon seeing the photo. Serafal. Do you know her? She asked doubtfully. Sona. Of course, she's not my friend for anything, but I can't say the same about them. She said it with a mocking smile. Riaz. This can't be. She said scared, while trying to shake her head. The leaders were doubtful, but then Azazel took the folder, but when he saw the image he was turned into stone. Azazel. This has to be a fucking joke. He said incredulously. He threw the folder on the table. Everyone seeing the image was in complete shock, since the image showed the goddess Athena as a 7 or 8-year-old girl, while next to her was Issei. But what scared them the most was seeing that the brown-haired boy was giving an engagement ring to the little goddess Athena, who could be seen happy, as well as a blush on her cheeks. Everyone was now more than scared. Ryu. Bullshit. He said loud enough for the leaders to hear, as he remembered how Riaz, Issei, Irina and he treated her, but now that they know of her position. Albion. Those fools are already dead, they just haven't been warned. Albion began to sing with a mocking smile, within the divide dividing. Everyone was scared as they looked at the image with fear, knowing that Athena was that girl, but on top of that, the fact that Issei Haidu was one of their childhood friends left them with a bad taste in their mouths. Azazel. Surziches, does this have to be a fucking joke? Thinking it was a joke in bad taste. Surziches. I'm not joking. He said seriously, now everyone was shaking with fear. Serafal. So Tan, you can help us create an alliance with her. She said, but Sona looked like she was thinking about it, but for her peerage, she was pretending to think about it, knowing the answer. Sona. I'm sorry, but I can't and I don't want to do it. She said. Zenobia saw Sona with bad eyes. Zenobia. What do you mean you can't? She asked angrily. Sona. Calm your tone with me, don't forget that you are a low-class devil, and I am a high-class devil. She said seriously, which made Zenobia grit her teeth. Surziches. I'm sorry Sona Citri, but as your Mau ordered you to help us. He said seriously. Sona. Do you really think you can do it, and if I do it, Mau Lucifer, she will know right away that I'm lying to her. She said seriously, which left many with doubt. Omenhold. What are you trying to say? She asked with annoyance, as she was angry to know that Sona Citri's former bishop was with her Issei. Sona. She has the ability to read the heart like the seraphim of hearts Gabriel. She said mockingly, which left everyone with a word in their mouths. Tiba. But since you are her friend, I doubt she would use that ability on you. He said, to which many nodded. But everyone started to hear Sona's laughter, as if she had been told the best joke in the world. Sona. She's going to use it on me, I have no doubt about that, maybe you don't believe me, but she'll stop using it when she finds a certain little person. She said mockingly, everyone knew she was referring to Issei. Azazel. It seems that now you have us at your feet. He thought frustrated. It seems that his happiness had an expiration date, as Ryu clenched his fists in frustration, to the point of bleeding, knowing that his brother was screwing up his life. Meanwhile, Issei saw all this as a game of Jenga, in which you should choose the right piece to remove, so that the tower does not collapse. Auden. We only have one solution left, right? He said, to which many nodded, thinking of the only solution. Make an alliance with the German faction. The women of each faction were furious, knowing that they would have to see their Issei with the two of them. But they knew they had no other solution. But if they had paid attention outside the meeting room, they could see Marana chatting for someone on the phone. Marana. It seems like they are too scared. She said over the phone. Don't worry, but I would have liked to see his face. He said, his voice was that of the girl, but laughter could be heard in the background. Marana. It seems that Haidu Baka is cursing Ice Kun. She said, while listening to the screams of the Crom crew host. You can even hear them from the side. Said the voice, but the sarcasm could be heard in its tone. Marana. Anyway, they have no choice but to form an alliance with Mio, isn't it like that Momo? She said with a small smile. Momo. Don't doubt it, but now it remains to be seen how long their pride lasts. He said from the other side, but you could see the mocking smile. But he also knew that this was going to be an opportunity for them to get closer to Issei, but he wasn't going to allow it for anything in the world. They continued talking for a few more minutes, but while Issei was too calm about what was happening, but inside the booster gear you could see Drake rolling on the ground. Drake. My stomach hurts. Trying to stop laughing, but I couldn't. The reason was that Drake had seen a memory of his host, where he met a girl named Saori Kido, who was the reincarnation of the goddess Athena, but he was dying of laughter at the thought of the beating his current partners were going to give his host, when they found out that his fiancée was the goddess Athena. But with Issei, he felt a chill as he looked at Momo with an overly kind smile that hadn't scared him, but what scared him the most was seeing that she gave off an aura that promised pain. "Momo. Icon, when were you going to tell us that you had a fiancé?" he asked while his aura became denser. Issei. Well. You see. I was. You know." Before Issei could explain, he received a beating that he will never forget, as well as remembering to never make them angry. After receiving his punishment, Momo and Mio's gaze could be seen, which demanded answers. Issei. "Well." he said resignedly. "I met her when I was barely 8 years old, days after you, Momo, went on vacation with your parents. I met her." he said, to which Momo remembered. "Momo. But that doesn't explain that she's your fiancé," she said confused, while Mio nodded. Issei. "It all happened because Issei, Ryu and the tomato-haired girl were bothering her for the color of her hair," he said, to which Mio and Momo nodded. "That day I defended her, from that day we started playing, before the year ended, she left for her father's work, which is why we promised to get married," he said, to which Momo was surprised to know that Issei had another friend, but she knew how Issei felt before, the loneliness of not having anyone to talk to. "Momo. Sorry," she whispered softly, to which Issei shook his head and approached her to caress her head. Issei. "It doesn't matter," he said, while Momo hid her face in Issei's abdomen. But Momo and Mio knew that they were not going to be the only ones in the Sekiryute's heart, so they decided to see that this girl truly loved him and that they were not like certain people. 5 days until the wedding. Location. Germany. The days numbered for the girls of the alliance were numbered, but you could see how some people were leaving the airport. These people were none other than Surziches, Azazel, Penemu, Irina, Serafal, Riaz and Sona, with their respective peerage, but Valeria also came with her team, who were dressed in informal clothes. "Riaz. We'll see each other soon, bitch," she said in her thoughts, while walking with her suitcase in her hand. "Zenvia. I hope to see them soon to make them pay," she thought, while a look of anger appeared on her face. But in the eyes of two girls there was only a look of pain and suffering, since they knew that they did not have a chance for Issei to forgive them or pay any attention to them. They would be hypocrite to ask for a second chance. They just clenched their fists in frustration. Sometimes they could hear their laughter a mockery. Before they felt happy to make fun of a pervert, now they cried just remembering every insult, word, mockery that hurt the Sekiryute's heart. Who would still love a pervert? "Don't touch us, loser. The day you die we are going to celebrate your death. You are a loser and you will remain a loser." You could see the guilt and remorse in their eyes, but now they have to pay for the sin they committed. But what hurt them the most was seeing that smile on her face, implying that they enjoyed it. Nero's residence. Issei could be seen talking to Mio, but his face did not look happy. "Issei. Don't you see that they are going to use it to bring me over, or at least not cut the ties that I am supposed to still have with them, according to their words," he said, while his eyes turned green. But then Mio hugs him. It seems that Mio was trying to remain calm, but she was far from remaining calm, since she was unleashing all her power, which is why she began to tremble. She would have felt it, but there was a barrier outside her home, which protected and hid her essences. "Mio. But knowing my father, he must have an ace up his sleeve," he said, but without knowing that by saying ace, he stopped the seal from spreading in the booster gear, but it seems that it was only for a few seconds. "Greg. I must be careful in case Albion is nearby, at least it won't be long before I'm done," he said to himself, as he watched the seal that was spreading, but upon reaching where 2 black flames were, the seal stopped. Something was preventing him from continuing. "What is this?" he asked himself mentally. It could only be seen that that seal stopped dead, but Drake drew a face of extreme seriousness, while putting on a look of anger. "Greg. So you still have feelings for them, but I still don't understand, why do you still love them, if they made you suffer hell?" he said with a tired look, but while thinking of a way to get those feelings out of his partner. "That's the only solution, right?" he said, while observing an orb of darkness, but unlike the flames, this one was not corrupted. Flashback. The destroyed area could be seen, but Issei could be seen, who was unconscious, but next to him was a short girl, but her black hair was so dark, it seemed that her hair surpassed the same darkness of infinity. "Greg. You have to go right now, otherwise my partner's sacrifice would be in vain," he said, but it seemed that the girl was not paying attention to him. It could be seen that a weak aura was emerging from her, but it was going straight to Issei, but it was not an attack. It seemed that she wanted to heal her wounds. "I'm not going to leave him alone, he's very hurt, if I leave he could die," he said, while continuing to heal his wounds. "Issei. Go away," he said weakly, to which the girl shook her head. No, it was the only thing he said, while he continued to heal his wounds. But suddenly they heard the sound of footsteps, indicating that people were coming to where they were. "Issei. I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It's not your fault, the only one here who is at fault is me," she said, while tears came out of her eyes. But without realizing it, a magic circle was formed behind the girl, but in that Issei with all the strength he had left pushed her, since the magic circle was a teleportation circle. Issei. Sayonara. He said, as the magic circle disappears, but then he watches as the Gremory entourage and his sister's entourage arrive. Ryu. Where is that stupid girl? He asked angrily. Issei. I don't know. He said weakly, instead of Asia helping him, or Ravel giving him a phoenix tear, they left him there dying, while he got up bleeding. But then Ryu approaches him, to take him by the neck, while making Ascalon appear, and then point the blade of the sword at his face. Ryu. You just don't know how to do anything right. He said seriously, but then a girl approaches him, but she gives Issei a pitying look. Maybe she's dead, at least you Ryu managed to save me from her. He said happily, while crying with joy. At that Ryu hugs the girl, but the girl had her back to Issei, but at that Ryu gives her an arrogant look, while whispering. This is something you will never enjoy. From which Issei had to see how his love interests were too affectionate with Ryu, to which he within his mental passage will begin to cry, but then he decides to calm down a little, and then get up and leave, but leaving a trail of blood. Issei. At least this one is saved. He thought with a smile, while a treacherous tear came out of his left eye. End of flashback. All this made Drake think about where this girl was, but he knew that she could seal these feelings that hurt their host. Issei. Will you be okay, Nix? I asked into the air, but it seemed that Momo and Mio did not pay attention to what Issei said. Unknown place. You could see a kind of somewhat destroyed sanctuary, but it seemed that there was a girl inside, but her black hair reflected the same darkness. Nix. Issei. She said sadly, while tears came out of her eyes, but she was angry with herself when she remembered that Issei saved her, but it came at the cost of being alone again. But then Nix decided to dry her tears, while the doors of her home opened, but in front of him was a girl with purple hair, but blue-green eyes, but in her right hand, she held a kind of wand. This girl was the reincarnation of Athena. Athena. Long time no see, Nix. She said seriously, but then she noticed how Nix just let out a sigh. Nix. What are you doing here, Athena? She said seriously, but she notices how Athena is staring at her. Athena. I need your help. She said, which left Nix baffled. Nix. What? She said confused. Athena. It's about the biblical factions, the Nordic and the Yokai. She said seriously, but then the image of Issei came to mind, of how he was used by the factions. Nix. And what would my role be? She asked suspiciously, to which Athena smiled, which infected Nix. Athena. They must pay, they used a human and I as a goddess who protects humans, I cannot allow this to happen. She said, to which Nix only nodded. Sixth heaven. You could see how a mist formed, but you could also see a peacock drawing in the sky. Gabriel. Who are you? Sarah asked, while a silhouette came out of it. Long time no see, sister. He said, as the silhouette became visible. Gabriel. Brother, what are you doing here? She asked scared. I came at the request of an old friend, but you know something. She said, to which Gabriel was afraid. Gabriel. What? She asked scared. I don't recognize you anymore, I thought you were going to protect humans, I realized that you are just like the fake Leviathan. He said sadly. Gabriel. I know I was wrong, but He couldn't finish speaking when he saw his brother raise his magic power. Don't talk nonsense, by the time Michael returns you will receive the punishment you deserve. He said, as he walked past her. Gabriel. But Malakani-chan, don't do something stupid. She said, to which her brother turned to see her and slapped her, which managed to knock her to the ground. At that moment Gabriel felt true terror. Issei could be seen running through the corridors of the most famous hospital in the underworld, which was located in the Citri territory, but desperation could be seen in Issei's gaze. Issei. This has to be a fucking joke. He said in his mind, while the tears did not stop. When he arrived at the emergency room, he could see the sign lit in red, which made Issei desperate. The seconds were eternal in that waiting room, while Issei walked from one side to the other, he couldn't be calm. Time after. And that he sees the sign that went out, and then he sees some nurses coming out, at the end the doctor came out, but the look on their faces gave Issei a bad feeling. When the doctor saw Issei, he approached the boy. Doctor? Are you a relative of? He said, to which Issei could nod. I'm sorry boy, she just died, Samuel's poison contaminated the blood, plus the arrow. He could not continue speaking, as the sound of an alarm began to be heard. 5 a.m. at the Nero's residence. You could see Issei get up suddenly, turn around and see that Mio and Momo were still sleeping. While on Issei's arm the booster gear appears. Greg. Partner, it wasn't your fault. He said seriously, while feeling his partner's helplessness. Issei. If only he hadn't trusted me. He said helplessly, anger, guilt, but the anger was directed at himself. Greg. But you didn't know I was going to shoot that arrow at you," he said, to which Issei clenches his hand, forming a fist. Issei. "Drake, if I hadn't protected Ryu, I could have prevented the death of," he said, to which Drake remained silent for a few minutes. Drake. "No, partner, maybe you would have saved her, maybe not, we don't know what would have happened," he said sadly, while remembering the actions that led him to be sealed in the booster gear. Issei. "You know, if I hadn't suffered all this, I wouldn't have met Momo and Mio," he said with a small smile. Drake. "You're right, partner, I just hope nothing bad happens in the future," he said seriously, to which Issei was left thinking about Drake's words. Without realizing that Momo was awake, she had a sad look on her face, remembering the person who helped open Issei's heart. "Momo?" "Issei," she whispered sadly, but she couldn't say anything else. The only thing she could do was approach the brunette pretending to be asleep, to rest her head on his chest, implying that she would always be there for him. The host of the Red Emperor, seeing that Momo was leaning on his chest to fall asleep again, Issei could only caress her head while drawing a small smile and then kiss her forehead and repeat this act with Mio. 2 hours later. The sunrise could be seen, but especially how it was dawning. The brown-haired boy seeing this could only get out of bed carefully so as not to wake up his 2 fiancées. Leaving the hall, he began to walk slowly to the kitchen while a question crossed his mind. Issei. How would you have gotten along with Mio? He asked himself out loud, but he was never going to know the answer to that question. Upon reaching the kitchen, he could only go to where a teapot was and then fill it with water. When he saw that it was full, he approached the stove while he turned it on and put the water to heat. He sat at the table waiting while he made a magic circle appear from a pocket dimension, and when he saw that a rosary came out of it, he might not have believed in God, but this rosary meant something else, to which the brown-haired boy could only let out a sigh. Greg. Partner, why don't you look for a little chain? He said melancholically, to which Issei agreed and then got up and started preparing breakfast. After a few minutes, Momo and Mio woke up, but when they turned around to where the brown-haired boy was, they could only notice that he had already gotten up, but before they could ask, they could smell food, implying that the brown-haired boy was making breakfast. But if they looked more closely on Momo's right shoulder there was a tattoo, but it had the shape of a red dragon head, implying that this was Issei's mark, and where he implied that he was her partner. When the two got up, they could only see how the brown-haired boy was preparing breakfast, but then Momo looked at the table, only to see a rosary without a chain, but when she saw it closer, she could recognize it and could only say, "Thank you." As a treacherous tear came out of his eye, the brown-haired boy just turned to look at them, while giving them a smile, to which Momo and Mio returned the gesture. Berlin streets, St. Marienkirche. Issei was walking through the capital of Germany. As he walked he could only see the sky, where he could see that a storm was approaching, but he let out a tired sigh when he knew that he did not have an umbrella. But looking at the watch on his wrist, he could only see that it was 1:30 in the afternoon, only to hear the sound of music. Seeing that several people were in a church, he approached, only to see how several people whom he could see were Catholics were at mass. But then she thought about what her wedding day would be like. More specifically, the day of 5 people, which were Momo, Mio, Sayori, Nix and Dot. Issei. What would our wedding have been like? He asked himself mentally, while closing his eyes. Memories of a girl came to his mind, but when he tried to extend her hand, the image in his mind was erased. "Excuse me," said a voice, to which Issei opens his eyes, to see in front of him a girl in nun's clothing. Issei. Yes. He said confused. "Wouldn't you like to join the mass?" He said, to which Issei thought for a moment. Issei. Why not? He said with a small smile. He began to approach the mass. Perhaps it didn't give him a headache or burns, because he was a dragon instead of a devil. But as if by fate he was able to hear the music, which brought some calm to the current security. But that was not what caught his attention, it was seeing someone leaving the church, but for a moment Issei could see that girl's face, which made the host of the Welsh dragon open his eyes wide, but when he did so, the girl in that wedding dress was no longer there. Which caught the attention of the girl in the nun's clothing, but when she saw how the boy was carrying a rosary in his hand, it caught her attention, since the rosary was different from the one she knew. Issei. Drake, is it bad to imagine what could have been? He asked through his mental link to the Red Emperor. Drake. Don't worry, buddy, people say that imagining something from the past can cause you a lot of harm, but others say that dreaming doesn't cost anything, Drake said confused. An hour later. People could be seen gathering outside, where several people gathered to eat, to which Issei could only watch as they socialized. Perhaps in the past he could have been envious, since he wanted to socialize with his brother's partners that way. Sorry for bothering you, but don't you want some food? Said that girl, to which Issei saw how she brought a plate for him. Issei. Thank you. he said. Well, the girl gave him his food, he began to eat calmly, but he could hear the music. But when an old man saw the brunette, the image of a child came to him, to which he approached him. Wait boy, I've seen you somewhere, he said, while putting his hand on his chin, while trying to remember, to which Issei stared at him for a moment. Issei. I'm sorry, but I haven't seen it anywhere, he said confused, to which the man suddenly hugs him. You don't remember me, it may be understandable, since you were just a child when I met you, he said, to which Issei stared at the old man, but upon seeing him closer, he could remember how the old man told him different things related to music, but also how he made his brother have a fetish. Issei. I already remembered you, he said with a smile, to which the brown-haired man stayed to talk with the old man. Boy, why don't you sing something for this old man? He said, to which Issei nods his head, in that you can see how he approaches the musicians, and asks to please let him sing. Issei, seeing how people were paying attention to him, took a deep breath, while putting on a sad look. When he finished singing, everyone was crying, since the song brought back memories of sadness, but they were not the only ones. Issei wanted to cry, so he decided to stop singing. When he approached where the old man was, he could see how he wiped away his tears. Boy, it seems you had to release what you had inside you, he said with a small smile, to which Issei couldn't help but smile. Grandpa, you know him from somewhere, said the girl wearing the nun's clothes, to which the old man could only let out a small laugh. That's right Elizabeth, I met this boy in Kuo about 9 or 10 years ago, he said with a smile, to which the girl couldn't help but be surprised. Elizabeth. It's a pleasure to meet a friend of my grandfather, she said with a small smile. Issei. It's nothing, but I must leave now, he said, to which the old man stared at the boy. Boy, where are your brothers? He said curiously, while Issei, upon hearing that, lowered his gaze. Issei. I don't know and I'm not even interested, he said with a lifeless voice. To which the old man stared at him, but saw how the current secretary turned his back on him, while he began to walk away from there. Who would have thought? He asked out loud, which caught his granddaughter's attention. Elizabeth. What do you mean? She said confused. When I met him, I could see how he was drawn to the stories I told him, since he wanted to be strong to protect others, while his brothers seemed to want to have everything on a silver platter, he said, to which Elizabeth stared at her grandfather, but then turned to see where Issei had gone. At the end she was able to turn to look at the brunette, only to see how he was lost in Elizabeth's sight. The breeze could be heard, but upon looking closer he could see how a girl with pink hair appeared in the middle of the road, but he could see how she gave him a small smile, and began to walk where the brown man had gone. He could only see how she disappears. Are you okay Elizabeth? He said with some concern, to which Elizabeth shook her head. Elizabeth. It was nothing, Grandpa, she said with a smile, while returning to serve the missing dishes. Meanwhile, on the other side of the capital of Germany, you could see Sona still entering the hotel, followed by Penemu, Kuroka, Valeria, Zenobia, Tsubaki, Ria and finally Sona, who had some bags in her hands just like Tsubaki and Ria. Sona. Its capital is very beautiful, don't you think Tsubaki-chan? She said with a big smile, which made Kuroka and Valeria angry. Tsubaki. You're right Sona-sama, it's very beautiful here in Germany, she said with a small smile. But this caused a little annoyance to the others, since so to speak, it was the love nest of Mio, Momo and Issei, but they couldn't do anything except watch, as Sona gave them a mocking smile. But then her cell phone rings, and when she sees the number she just takes it and leaves the room to answer it. Which left those present with doubt. Momo. Hello Sona. Sona. Long time no see Momo. Momo. Yeah, it's been a while since we last saw each other. Sona. That's right, but now tell me why you need me. Momo. I was going to ask you, Tsubaki Ria and you a favor. Sona. What is it about? Momo. If you could be my bridesmaids, please. Sona. Of course, it would be a pleasure to be your bridesmaids. Momo. We can meet at the downtown mall in 2 hours. Sona. Of course. Momo. See you there. After finishing the call, Sona was seen standing for a while, but after a few minutes she decided to enter her room, while she saw those present with an angry grimace and her queen laughing at the faces of Ryu's harem. Sona. Tsubaki and Ria, we have to go do something very important, she said seriously, which caught the attention of Valeria, Kuroka, Irina and Zenobia. Kuroka. Where are you going, I or Naya? She asked angrily, to which Sona only had a twitch in her right eye. Sona. You shouldn't care, Fatball-chan, or am I wrong? She said, to which Kuroka had a twitch in her right eye. But at least I take a bath and I don't lick myself like you, she said, which made Kuroka angry. The atmosphere had become heavy seeing that the two were going to kill each other, but Tsubaki and Valeria decided to interfere. While Sona, Rya and Tsubaki left, the others remained silent, seeing that Kuroka was throwing a tantrum of disgust at what Sona told her. Sona. It was too easy to bother the Nico. She said with a smile. Rya. What does Sona-sama mean? She asked curiously. Sona. Momo-san just called me, he asked Tsubaki, you and I for a favor. He said, which left both of us curious. Tsubaki. What for? I asked curiously. Sona. It seems that we will be your bridesmaids. She said, which surprised those present. Unaware that Irina was in one of the hallways, but upon hearing the news that Momo and Mio were going to marry Issei, she felt a great tightness in her chest. As she watched the three leave, she couldn't do anything to stop Issei's happiness. To which she could only lower her head, while tears fell from her eyes, while she tried to dry her tears in vain. Then a happy memory came to her, but that memory was now only an unattainable dream. Issei. Irina-chan, don't go. He said sadly. Irina. I don't want to go either. She said with tears in her eyes and a broken voice. Issei. I don't like to see you cry, don't cry. He said sadly. Irina. But. She was interrupted by Issei. Issei. How about when you come back you'll be my fiancé? He said with a smile, which made Irina stop crying. Remembering that promise, she could only fall to her knees, while in front of her appears a version of a girl, which was Irina in her childhood years. Little Irina. Why did you do it? She asked with disappointment, to which the current Irina could only clench her hands into a fist. Irina. I didn't want. She was interrupted by little Irina. Little Irina. I didn't ask you that, tell me, why did you do it? She asked angrily. Irina. I thought Ryu was better than. She couldn't finish speaking, as the little girl slapped her, but that slap that her little self gave her, forced her to see her own past. Little Irina. Shut up, please shut up, every word you say makes me feel sorry for you, I wish I didn't become you, but it's too late, since I'm just your past. She said with regret when she saw what she had become. Little by little Irina was fading, but in her eyes you could see the sadness. Michael's ace knew very well that everything he wanted to have in the past for today in his future was a dream, and that was how it was going to happen. Meet. Time after. You could see Momo and Mio trying on different wedding dresses for their wedding, while Sona, Rya and Tsubaki praised them on how they looked, in addition to choosing the dress they were going to wear as bridesmaids. But behind the store's display case you could see Irina, whose hair covered her eyes. Irina. I would have liked to be one of them. She said with envy, but then shook her head. As he turned around, a black feather could be seen slowly falling to the ground, but when it reached the ground, it could be seen losing its shine. As he walked he could see the entire mall. In the end he could only see how several people walked, as if they didn't care what was happening around them. When he arrived at a restaurant he could see that it was a place with live music, so he decided to eat at that place. When he arrived he could feel several presensions of devils. Captain. Very good afternoon, on this day we still have a guest who has been in the news right now. He said with a smile, which caught everyone's attention. With you is the current secretary, Issei Haidu. He said, which many applauded, while he went up to the stage, without paying attention to the fact that his childhood friend was in that same place. He approached where there was a piano, but when he sat down he closed his eyes, while he began to play slowly. She began to remember how little by little she fell for Ryu's lies, and how Issei told her that she had to choose someone better than even a pervert. But her chest hurt more when she remembered how she rejected Issei. He had dedicated a song to her, but she had rejected him in the cruelest way. He could only watch as Issei began to play another song, but before he could do so, he spoke into the microphone for a moment. Issei. Thank you for being with us today, but this song can be a little sad, that's why I can't stand this song, cover your ears. He finished speaking, while giving a small sigh. That song went straight to Irina's heart, but in every part of the world some felt like something broke their hearts, others wanted to lend their shoulder so that Issei could vent. Issei saw how people wiped away their tears, to which he could only sigh, but when he saw an even more specific place, he could see Irina, his childhood friend. He only got up from where he was sitting, and then walked to the reincarnated angel. When he arrived he could only sit down without receiving an invitation from Irina when she sat down. Issei. So you came to Germany? He said seriously, while Irina stares at Issei, but quickly looks away, since she couldn't see his eyes. Irina. Yes. She said sadly. Issei. So they came to see if they could form an alliance. He said seriously, to which Irina nodded. Irina. Yes, I also found out that you are going to get married. She said sadly, but in her voice you could also hear jealousy and envy. Issei. Of course, my wedding will be in a week, I think 2 days after your wedding with Ryu. He said without giving it any importance. Irina. I think we both found the people we truly love. She lied, as she felt her heart being stabbed mercilessly with those simple words. Issei. Hahaha, you're right, it seems that our destiny was truly to never be together. He said as if nothing, while Irina felt her dreams being broken. Irina. I'm glad you'll find your happiness. She said with a small smile. Issei. Thanks, but you're not far behind either. He said with a nostalgic smile. Irina. What was it? Before finishing asking, she was interrupted by Issei. Issei. You should know exactly, this was due to his own decisions when being with my brother. He said seriously, without showing any emotion. Irina. She wanted to deny it, but Issei was right, you're right. She admitted sadly. Issei. You know Shidu, you were my support, when I saw you again I knew that it had been worth every fucking second to wait. He said ironically. But just like a dream, you have to wake up. He said, while Irina felt like her heart was being broken. Irina. It's just that She tried to make an excuse, but was interrupted by Issei. Issei. Please stop, you're just fooling yourself. She said, while raising her hand. You decided to make your life and I made mine, it's that easy to explain it. She said, implying the obvious. Irina. I understand, but was interrupted again by Issei. Issei. I can't give you that chance to start from scratch, but I can't forget every insult. We promised to get married, but it seems that said promise was just words. He was venting to Irina, but then he says something that ends all this. I'll tell you the same words he told me a long time ago. We were just kids, we didn't know what we were doing at that age. He said bitterly. Irina was touched by those words deep in her heart, since she was being a hypocrite by asking for a second chance with Issei. Irina. I understand Haidu-san, but I wanted to be selfish with myself by asking you for a second chance, but it seems like I don't deserve it, but I don't blame you for this, it's my fault for being so blind, I preferred to put my whims first, and I hurt you. He said sadly. Issei. You know, I can't yell at you because we are nothing, our promise was just words, I hope you are very happy with Ryu. He said, to which Irina could only nod. As Issei stood up from his seat and walked up onto the stage to sing one last song. When they finished singing, everyone was crying, but there was one person in particular who only got up from his seat as he left in silence, while remembering every moment he spent with Issei, while a treacherous tear fell from his face. Irina. Sayonara. Haidu. Issei. She said sadly. The applause was not long in coming, some devils from the Germany faction knew what the current Sekirute suffered, so they knew that singing was a way in which he was letting off steam. Issei looked round for Irina, but couldn't find her, implying that she had left the place. Meanwhile, inside the booster gear it could be seen that the seal that was sealing the feelings, little by little, was slowly sealing the feelings that Issei felt for Irina. But that was not the only thing that happened, in addition to that the flame was slowly going out, perhaps it would take a while to go out, but it was already a fact that Issei was closing a chapter of his life, while another was opening, for a new beginning of the current Sekirute. Returning to Issei. He was deep in thought, but in the end he decided not to do anything, as Irina decided her own path and his own way. Issei. We will always be friends, Irina. He remembered those words that he said to Irina at some point before she left for Italy, where it took him a long time to see her again. Those were the last words Issei said before closing a chapter in his life. Meanwhile, four people could be seen gathered together. These people were none other than Sayori, Nyx, Hades and a beautiful girl with pink hair, but in the eyes of the three girls, you could see an anger that even Trixahara himself felt afraid. Hades. I still can't believe that you, Athena, fell in love with the boy. He said gracefully, to which Athena turned to look, his gaze told her to shut up or she would suffer the wrath of a woman. Nyx. Brother, I want you to do me a favor. He said, to which Hades stared at him. Hades. What do you need? He asked curiously, but kept his face serious. Nyx. I need them one more time. He said, to which Hades knew what beings he was talking about. Hades. You know that if Zeus finds out about this, you could be sealed or lose your divinity as well as become a mortal being. He said, to which Nyx did not take a step back. Nyx. I know perfectly well, but I want to help him like he helped me. She said, to which Hades had a small smile. Hades. It will be a pleasure. He said, to which Nyx smiled. At that Hades clicked, then the doors where the soul's rest came out, two beings that slowly came out. But when they see Nyx, they lower their heads in respect, at which Nyx smiles, since before her were the two dogs of hell. Nyx. I need your help, you will help me. He began to explain to his hounds, to which the two barked angrily, and they were also grateful to the current Sekirute for protecting their mistress. As Athena listened to Nyx's words, she could notice the blush that was beginning to cover the goddess's cheeks. Athena. So you fell in love with Ice-kun. She said in her thoughts. This did not go unnoticed by Hades either, but before he could make fun of Nyx, he heard a soul giving heartbreaking screams. He knew very well who those screams were from. Hades. I hope you can meet the current secretary," he said as he returned to his chambers. As he left 3 girls, but the third one seemed a little nervous. "Athena. It's time to go, it seems like this will be a great welcome," she said, while the goddess of the primordial night nodded, while the other nodded nervously. 6th heaven. You could see several angels gathered together, but in the tree of Eden, you could see the most beautiful seraphim in heaven, but she was lying on the tree, while hiding her face between her legs. "Gabriel. What would you say to me, Father, if you were alive?" he asked the void, while his eyes reflected sadness. "I would have probably been disappointed in you," said a voice devoid of emotions, but you could hear the displeasure in that voice. At which Gabriel stopped hiding his head in his legs, while he turned to look where that voice came from, only to see Malak, who was leaning against a tree. "Gabriel. I think you're right," he said, but Malak, upon hearing the word "I think," got angry. "Malak. How is that? What do I think? He would actually be disappointed in you, but he would send you straight to Grigori," he said coldly, to which Gabriel knew he was right, but he tried to deny it, but the truth was that he was completely wrong. But she didn't notice what he said. "But he would send you straight to Grigori," to which Gabriel for once wanted to be selfish with herself, but she knew deep in her heart that she was not worthy of being with Issei. "Gabriel. What will my punishment be?" she asked resignedly, hoping that the punishment would be quick and painless. "Malak. The only thing I can tell you is that it is related to the last judgment," he said as he left, to which Gabriel opened his eyes, knowing what his punishment was. Gabriel remembered that the customs were always to read people's hearts, he always lived with that custom, but when he heard the words that Ryu told him about his brother, he remembered that he never read his heart since he was attracted to Ryu at first sight, to which he listened, so he could only understand what the human beings were referring to. It was physical attraction, but not sentimental attraction. Those words echoed loudly in her head, since when she lost Ryu at the hands of the poison that Shalba shot at him with an arrow, she could only feel sadness, but when she remembered how Issei died, she felt her heart break into pieces, and tears began to come out of her eyes. Remembering that scene, she could remember the phrase that Mirana told her when she showed her the video of the interview of Issei's engagement with Mio and Momo. "You don't know what you have until you lose it." By remembering that phrase, she could know what it felt like to lose the true person she loved. As she stood up, she could see the brunette standing for a moment, watching her from afar, but in his face you could see his resignation. It wasn't because he had rejected him, the resignation was because he had lost her, and she was never going to be by his side. "Gabriel. Don't go away," he said sadly, as he fell to the cold grass, while crying for the loss of Issei. As the times the brunette saw her came to mind, his gaze showed more interest than the current Crom crew host's own gaze. The times he wanted to start a conversation with her, but she coldly rejected him or, like him, completely ignored him. In the end she realized it, but it was too late, she only felt interest in Ryu. She started to sing, but she wanted to free herself from his restraints. When she finished singing, she could only let out a sigh of relief. That day had ended with a broken heart, a meeting between 3 deities, but the meeting that would decide peace or a possible war was approaching. 3 days until the wedding, day of the meeting between the Alliance and the Germany faction. You could see several people preparing what looked like a gala party, but you could see all the people entering and leaving what looked like a luxury room. "Issei. The day has come," he said tiredly, but he was also happy to be able to tell everyone present about his engagement with Mio and Momo, since they were waiting for this great announcement, and even more the devils of Germany. "Mio. Issei, I'm going to go with Momo to see about some dresses tonight, for our meeting with the factions," she said with displeasure at the last thing, but Issei decided not to say anything else, since he had something planned for Mio and Momo, which Mio's father supports in this. "Issei. Of course go, I have something important to see with Saji," he said with a smile. To which Mio nodded, but it could be seen that Issei left the house, but after walking a little, he arrived near a park, but when he saw the landscape well, a small smile appeared on his face. In that, Saji could be seen dressed in a grey sweatshirt and pants of the same color, but he was wearing white tennis shoes. "Issei. Saji, long time no see old friend." He greeted his friend, since he had not seen him since he helped him fake his death and escape from Kuo. "Saji. You're right," he said with a smile. To which the two sat for a moment, but at that Saji decides to break the silence. "Saji. So you're getting married, eh?" he said, to which Issei stared in front of him. "Issei. That's right, but how has your relationship with Haruko-san gone? From what I know, you became a couple a short time ago," he said, to which Saji could only laugh. "Saji. You're right, but what do you plan to do now that you're free from the Alliance?" he said, to which Issei could only let out a tired sigh. "Issei. Enjoy my life with the people who kept me from closing my heart," he said, while remembering every vivid moment with Momo, Mio, Sayori, Nix and Dot. But when he remembered the latter, he could only lower his gaze, while a treacherous tear fell from his eye, to which Saji knew perfectly well who it was. "Saji. You still miss her, don't you?" he said melancholically, since that girl, along with Momo, were the only ones who could make his friend smile. "Issei. I would lie to you if I told you no, but the truth is there are times when he blamed me for not being strong enough," he said sadly. "Saji. But don't forget that he did it so you could continue living," he said, to which Issei could only let out a small sigh. "Issei. You're right, but if I hadn't prevented Ryu from shooting that arrow, maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have drunk my blood with Samuel's poison, she would be here alive," he said, while remembering the image of a girl with pink hair, her green eyes, that smile that adorned her face. "Saji. Don't be mortified, but at least she rests in peace wherever she is," he said with a smile. "Issei. That's right." He affirmed the words of Pawn Sitri, to which he stood up from where he was sitting. "Saji. We better go see what we'll be wearing tonight," he said, to which Issei nodded. "Issei. You're right," he said, but before turning around, he felt like he had hit something, only seconds later to hear the sound that someone had fallen to the floor, only to see a girl between 7 or 8 years old. The witch Issei quickly decided to help her up, but Saji saw all this, but when he saw the girl's white hair, he could only laugh inside, as she looked like the image of a father with his daughter. "Issei. You're fine," he said, as he helped the little girl up. "Oh." She couldn't say anything, since she was nervous being in front of two strangers. But in the distance they saw a girl running. Saji did not know who the girl was, but Issei had met her yesterday, since the girl was the granddaughter of the old man who told him the stories of great heroes in his childhood. But when the little girl saw Elizabeth she got nervous, to which she quickly hid behind Issei. "Elizabeth. Hello Issei, haven't you seen a girl with white hair, her eyes are purple?" she said worriedly, while the girl behind Issei began to tremble. "Issei. Yes, it's here," he said, to which he turns around, revealing the little girl. "Elizabeth. Rin, don't do it again, you had me worried when you ran away," she said worried, but with relief when she saw that the girl was fine, but the little girl started crying. "Rin. Bua." He started crying, which Elizabeth tried to calm down, but she couldn't. "Saji. Issei, I'll come right away," he said, as he left. Both Issei and Elizabeth tried to calm her down, but it was impossible, so Issei decided to caress her head, to which the little girl slowly began to calm down. After a few minutes Saji arrived, in his hands he was carrying what looked like ice cream. "Saji. Take it little one," he said, to which the little girl took the ice cream. "Rin. Thank you," she said a little calmer, while he ate ice cream, to which Saji gave an ice cream to both Issei and Elizabeth. You could see the four of them sitting down eating the ice cream, but more specifically little Rin, who seemed calmer. "Issei. Elizabeth, why was this little girl crying?" he asked curiously, to which Elizabeth lowered her head. "Elizabeth. It seems like they want to send her to a foster home, but she doesn't want to be separated from me, since I see her as my daughter," she said, while stroking Rin's head, who seemed to be eating ice cream. "Saji. Not again, now what are we going to get into?" he said in his thoughts, while he saw Issei moved by that scene, but Saji also understood the reason for that smile. "Issei. They look like a family," he said, to which Saji formed a mocking smile, seeing how Elizabeth blushed. To which Saji stood in front of them, but had taken out his cell phone, then turned it on and entered the camera application and put his cell phone on silent mode, so that it could not be heard when he was going to take the photo, to which he first turned off the flash and took a photo of Issei, along with Elizabeth and Rin. Which Issei, Elizabeth or Rin didn't notice, but they spent a while talking with Issei and Saji, but at that moment Issei's cell phone started ringing, but when he saw who it was, he got a look of surprise. Seriousness, to which Saji saw and gave himself a chance of who could talk to him, but Elizabeth also realized it, but she was confused why she got like that when she saw that the brunette was marked. "Call. Issei. Who gave you my number?" The complaint in his voice was emotionless. "I just wanted to talk to you sometime, if possible," she said shyly, to which Issei could only shake his head. "Issei. You know, it's very funny that you ask for a moment to talk to me, since I always wanted to talk to you, but you always ended up telling me that you didn't have time," he said with a certain tone of reproach, which surprised Elizabeth, but Saji listened. That voice, thanks to his enhanced senses from being a devil, dragon. "I know that my attitude was not correct before, but everyone deserves a second chance," he said with the hope that Issei would give him a second chance. "Issei. You're right, everyone deserves a second chance, but only those who deserve it or at least try to fix their own mistakes, but it seems that you don't deserve it. Akeno," he said, which left Queen Rias depressed. "Akeno. I thought we could meet to talk about what happened to our friendship," she said sadly, but Issei was bothered by certain words. Issei. It's funny you say that, we have a friendship, but as far as I remember you were never interested in having a friendship with this useless guy. He said before hanging up and blocking Akeno's number. End of call. After finishing the call, the reason was unknown, but Elizabeth breathed a sigh of relief upon knowing that Akeno wanted to talk to her friend Issei, since her grandfather told her what Issei was like when he was little, to which in a certain way his grandfather planted a seed in his heart. Saji. Issei, we must leave, the event is almost there. He said, to which he avoided mentioning that Issei had a partner, since he saw Elizabeth had a slight interest in the brunette. Issei. You're right, I'm sorry Elizabeth, but I must go. He said, to which Elizabeth just nodded. But without realizing that little Rin had a small smile. She said some words that left the brunette and the white silver-haired girl somewhat petrified. Rin. Goodbye dad. He said with a smile, to which he left the two mentioned petrified, while Saji laughed at seeing an embarrassed Issei and Elizabeth who had a blush that would make Ria's hair look ridiculous. But no one said anything, since the embarrassment was too much, to which Issei left from there, while Saji saw every moment the image of Issei with Elizabeth and little Rin, to which he could only smile, seeing his friend achieve happiness, which he had to win battles, almost die and get up again and again, for it to bear fruit. Time passed as if nothing had happened. In the end Saji decided to help Issei with something he had in mind, to which Saji contacted his king, to which she gave him permission. Meanwhile, after finishing the call with Issei, the hotel room could be seen. Akeno was lying on her right side. She had tears in her eyes, remembering how she ignored Issei, but the times she was slowly degrading him, along with Ria's, Asia, Kaneko, Irina, Yui, Kaori, among others, she could realize that she was worse than a fallen angel. Akeno. I'm the worst. She said, since for the first time she no longer enjoyed making others feel and suffer, since now that suffering is making her suffer. But then she sees the figure of a beautiful girl forming in front of her. Her hair was pink, her beauty competing with her and Ria's. You are the worst and you said that you weren't going to be the same as everyone, but it's a shame, you know, I would have preferred Rainer to be with him than you in his place. He said, well his hair turned white, but when Akeno looked up a little, she could see red eyes that were asking for justice. Seeing those eyes, Akeno quickly got out of bed, only to see that it was just her own mind playing a cruel joke on her. She could only cry when she saw that that girl was Issei's true guardian angel. Meanwhile, the person could be seen walking very calmly through the corridors of a castle. Many may have seen him confused with Lord Gremory, but it was not him, in reality it was Mioneris's father, since it was Wilbert. Wilbert. Is everything ready for tonight? He asked a girl with silver white hair. That's right, I also sent an invitation to Mr. Zeus. He said, to which Wilbert only had a small smile. Wilbert. I want to see how you face your past boy. He thought seriously, before re-entering the castle. What was he referring to? But without further ado the girl just looked ahead to see the sun in all its splendor and let out a small sigh, while a smile appeared on her face. It looks like the party is going to be very entertaining. He thought he was going to have fun watching the suffering of certain people while he got lost in the castle hallway. At the same time, you could see in the case of evil pieces how the bishop piece was reacting, while little by little a violet glow appeared, but as it happened, it went out to return to its normal color, but if one looked closely, one could see a violet crystal inside it. Time after, the cloudy sky could be seen. Those clouds were gray, but realizing what this could mean, perhaps she wanted to boast in the past that she had Ryu's brother at her feet, but it seems that was no longer the case. She could see her brother Malak in front of her. Below her was a magic circle red like the thickest blood in the world. The moon at first glance had a red tone, compared to the full moon. It was not white or yellow, but red. There was not enough time for the final judgment to begin. At the same time, carriages could be seen arriving, as well as people from high society, but in addition to that, about 6 carriages could be seen bringing down the Gremory peerage, the leaders of the alliance and the Citri entourage. Well, they were looking for a person, while others were angry. One was holding his wound, which once had been an arm. From the roof of the building in front was a girl, wearing a lowly gothic dress. It was none other than the dragon goddess of infinity, Office Ouroboros. Her gaze that did not express any feeling, sadness could be seen in that gaze. In what looked like a living room, a brown hair-colored boy could be seen. It was none other than Issei Haidu, who was sitting on a sofa while he rested his head with his hands, which seemed to be thinking about something, but if one looked better, one could see the bitterness in his gaze. But then he saw someone in the doorframe, only to see how one of his fiancées was, which was Momo. Momo. Issei. She said worriedly, seeing how her fiancé was doing. The witch Issei turned to see her, but as if she were a ghost, he could feel that someone was resting their hand on his shoulder, but when he turned to look, he could see the girl who supported Momo, so that he could open his heart. The witch Issei got up from the sofa, while standing in front of Momo, and then kissed her, to which she reciprocated without hesitation. Greg. It seems that this night will mark the end of one life and the beginning of a new one, he said. Well, he could see how the seal was slowly getting closer to covering a flame, but this flame was pink, but the seal, upon touching it, instantly recedes. At the same time, you could see different people take their place, to which many took their seats, but overlooking a small stage, which was with 2 red curtains covering what seemed like a surprise, but a common person was looking at Issei, but a girl had entered through the main door, accompanied by different people. But this person had a great resemblance to Akeno Himejima, her Aunt Shuri. Behind her came the Slash Dog team, and behind them came the Bale clan and the Agares clan. The most surprised were Ria's, Surzich's, Azazel and Akeno, since in front of them were family or friends. Presenter. Have a very good night today, all of you, in addition to thanking you for joining us today at this party, to be able to celebrate the engagement of the ladies Momo Hanakai and Mio Naros. He said, to which the 2 present were present, while these 2 went out to one side of the small stage, to which they greeted, but certain girls were jealous. It is great news to know that they will marry the Sekiruyute of this time, but we also have a surprise for all of you and the current fiancé of these ladies. Everyone was curious to know what this surprise from Issei was. Many were curious to see what it was about. The stage curtain had been raised. Many were surprised. They found Issei with a microphone in his hand. Next to Saji was there, who also had a microphone in his hand. The lights had been turned off, leaving only 2 that illuminated Issei and Saji, while Momo, Mio and Raruko were behind them. In front of them there was also a microphone. At a table a little further from the center was Mio's father, who watched all this with great attention, but at a table were Momo's parents. Issei. It is a pleasure to be in front of all of you today. He said through the microphone. You could see a look in his face that reflected nervousness and sadness. Tonight we come to sing some songs that show a small part of my life, I hope and like. Everyone present had mixed emotions, since that song was a reference to leaving the past behind and starting a new life, too. While Wilbert was surprised by his daughter's talent, this was also a surprise for Momo's parents. They could not stand it any longer and began to applaud, which little by little everyone joined in, but certain girls were jealous of what had happened. They wanted to be in their place, but some knew that was impossible. After finishing applauding, it could be seen that Saji, like Momo, Mio and Raruko, left the stage, leaving only Issei on the stage, to which Issei breathed deeply while looking in front of him, but the image of a certain seraph came to his mind. At the same time, in the 6th heaven, Gabriel could be seen with tears in his eyes. In the distance Michael could be seen trying to persuade Malak not to commit said foolishness. Michael. For this, our father would not have done this. He said, to which Malak stared at him for a while, and then looked away. Malak. I told you once, I'm not going to give in. You committed a sin that even I myself follow. He said, which confused everyone. Michael. What are you talking about? He said, confused. Malak. You played at being gods because of how you judged the current Sekiruyute without even giving him the benefit of the doubt. He said, to which Michael lowers his gaze. But before he can say anything, he looks surprised to see who is stopping him from speaking. Gabriel. Brother, let Malak do the ritual. If this is my punishment for my actions, this was thanks to my decisions, I implore you, let him continue. She said, while being watched by her brothers, friends and servants. Malak began to recite the spell, to which Michael saw how his sister was crying, but still kept her smile, but as if fate wanted to play one last time. In Germany, Issei began to sing. Little by little the moon turned red, until it became completely blood red, while its light illuminates the circle in which Gabriel is. At the same time as this part, Mio's father was seen walking, to which he went up to the stage. When he got to the stage he took a microphone and started singing next to Issei. The seraphim Gabriel could be seen crying, while little by little the magic circle that was under Gabriel lit up. Gabriel's wings began to flicker, the ring on his head gradually disappearing. Gabriel's feathers were falling to the ground, but as if the sky let out a sigh, the feathers began to form a tornado that was becoming wider because of the feathers falling from his wings. The tornado turned black. Eventually the tornado dissipated as the now black feathers fell to the ground, revealing Gabriel's wings, which were now those of a devil. When Issei finished singing, he could only see how Wilbert looked at him, to which he nodded. Everyone except the alliance of factions began to applaud, to which Issei and Wilbert bowed in gratitude. While in heaven you could see Gabriel, who finally burst into tears when she saw his wings. Malak. You are no longer an angel, now you are just a devil like our brother Lucifer was, just like him, you are expelled from heaven, you can go get your things and leave for the territory that will now be your home. She said, to which everyone understood that she was referring to the underworld. The hearts cards that Griselda and Marana were carrying came out of their bodies. When they reached Gabriel's front they turned into a ball of energy, but it became light energy, but it became as dark as coal and entered Gabriel, implying that Griselda and Marana became human again. That's it guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.